We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Happy Canada Day. That just happened yesterday as we're recording this. You're hearing this a number of days after, and this is going to be coming out, pretty much July 4th, isn't it? Something like that. Close to it anyway.
I will be... Oh, that reminds me. I will not be here next week.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
That's all right.
There's some news. Also, Skype video decided that right as we started this podcast, it was going to wig itself out. So the YouTube video is going to be a little bit fun, trying to get that early lip sync all lined up. But you know how successful we are anyway. Congratulations to the United States for your 248th and possibly final Independence Day.
Maybe.
Just... decided you want to have a king
Could
back.
be the last season. Could be the last season.
Could be it. Almost made it to 250.
Almost. But, they're not as dedicated as we are.
Yeah.
We're at 920.
My goodness. And for anyone who is wigging out and thinking maybe they'll escape to Canada, out of the United States if they don't like the way things are leaning in your political system there, don't look at us, because things
it's not getting any better over there.
Not going the right direction.
Crazy by association.
It is not looking good up here either. So.
Jeez.
Everybody's going to New Zealand, I guess, but they're having troubles, aren't they? Are in New Zealand something's going on there too now?
Who knows? they got rugby though, and that's kind of cool.
Anyway,
I keep hearing Skype noises happening.
Yeah, I know.
Is that you?
I'm not doing anything on Skype, but it's wigging out over there as far as what's going on. So
I'm hardwired. I'm doing all the stuff I'm supposed to be. Oh, you were super frozen. Oh no, you're moving.
Yeah,
okay.
I know.
Okay.
I don't know. Gotta love the tech behind the scenes. So
yes.
It was pretty hard to, we're by no means a political podcast, but it was pretty hard to ignore everything that was going on this week, for posterity, people watching this in the future.
One of the most depressing presidential debates ever seen in the history.
Honestly, that
was there a winner? I don't think so.
No.
I don't think there was a winner.
Also, it wasn't a debate. That's not a debate.
It wasn't much of a debate either. It was
just flat out saying the opposite of the truth. You can't debate that. You can't have a debate with that. That's just, yes, you did. No, I didn't. That's the end. We're at an impasse. That is not a debate. That is not a discussion.
Anyways.
It's nothing. Absolutely nothing.
It is what it is.
But
all right, so let's talk about the mic last week.
Okay, yeah, that's the happy news.
That's the happy
or the
thing.
Happier side. Yeah.
I think the overall consensus is that it's better, but not much better. A lot of people seem to think that. I guess I'll read. What's
Sure. Might as well say.
Yeah, so James, Joe, and Nathan did at least grant that the R was better than the X, and Nathan noticed it sounded much better when I got right close to it, so maybe just me use like a dynamic microphone after all.
Yeah. Maybe,
but I don't care. Let me put it to you this way. All right, so many times when you review something, if it gets any sort of negative feedback, the manufacturer will say, "Oh, but you're supposed to use it this way." I'm like, "Listen, you are not the boss of me, okay? You are not the boss of every other consumer on the market.
Yeah.
If you look at this microphone or any microphone, how are you going to use it?
Okay.
So that's sort of, and that one in particular, you can control right on the mic how hot the input is on it. So I adjusted that so that it was the little bar when I was normally talking was going very up, very, very high.
Yeah.
Not clipping, but up towards the max when I was normally talking. At the distance it was at.
I mean, just
this isn't
play devil's advocate and go to the far extreme to make the point.
Here comes Canada. Canada's in the chat.
Right. I mean, I'm just saying, like, my microphone, very obviously stage style microphone, either meant to be handheld or in a microphone clip, and obviously the style where you're meant to talk right down the barrel of the mic. Now, if I put that 3 feet away from me and aimed it towards me like a shotgun mic, and then complained that it didn't sound very good. And then
Yes.
Audio-Technica wrote back to me to say, well, it's really intended for it to be used with it right up to your mouth. And I said, well, that's the way I want to use it, so I didn't think it sounded very good that way. Like, that wouldn't be fair.
That one, I've seen reviews like that too, where you see that all the time on Amazon. It's like,
sure, yeah,
this thing sucks. It didn't work at all in the way that I was using it.
I didn't put the batteries into it. It requires batteries, but it still didn't work when I took it out of the box.
This microphone was within inches of my mouth. I mean, it was very close. Okay. It was not super far away.
It wasn't super far away, but I mean, you weren't using it like the way I use my microphone. With your mouth right up.
Again,
on it,
I don't think I should have to with that type of microphone. That being said, a bunch of YouTube comments included some helpful ones with instructions like twist the base off of it, a quarter turn to remove the tabletop stand and reveal a 3/4 inch insert. A thread insert to attach to a tripod or boom arm that was designed to be used up close and sounds much whatever. Shut up.
Well, so I mean, they're just saying
the microphone does not come with the base attached for all you people who suddenly think I don't know how microphones work. Okay, so this is what they're talking about. If you're on YouTube, you can see it.
Okay.
It's a quarter turn. The base comes off, and there's a little threaded insert in here. This does not attach to a normal microphone.
Yeah, like it's
stand.
not a mic clip thing, and
the microphone boom arm that they sell has this. That has the normal microphone stand attachment. Does not have a 3/4 inch or whatever the heck this is.
Yeah, so you'd need an adapter because those certainly exist.
Their other microphone, as you can see, this is the one that everybody hated so much, does have the correct attachment here. Yeah. Okay, so shut up. I know how microphones work. I've been doing this for a couple of years. All right. So this is not, I mean, that is not, to me, that's not a big deal. I don't really care that it doesn't come with that. It's just a point of interest.
Yeah, and because adapters,
it's not negative.
Adapters easily do exist for that. That's not an uncommon adapter that people
But it
use.
doesn't come with it, so it can't be used with it. And there's no real indication. They don't show any pictures on their site of it being used in conjunction with that arm anyways. So you put all that together, they didn't really mean for that to be used with that arm unless you really wanted to. This was really meant to be a desktop, tabletop thing. And while you can make the argument that you can place it directly in front of you while your hands are, controlling your keyboard and everything else. Yeah. You can make that argument. And maybe your face would be quite closer enough that the microphone would sound better. Yeah. It's not so useful in filming. So if you are a Twitch streamer, you don't want that microphone covering your face. Yeah. And that's sort of what
that's what would happen. My microphone partially covers my face because that's the only way to make it work properly, and that would be the case. Plus, I mean, the thing that would bother me is the RGB lighting all over it. I'm like, which I guess maybe was kind of intended to partially be the point, which is that it would be very visible if you had that microphone right up in front of your face. Then you'd see the fancy lighting on the back of it. But at the same time, I would find that tremendously distracting. And if you were using it in a streaming situation, it would almost certainly be reflecting that light off of your monitor because they're going to be, monitor's going to be in front of your eye line, and that's not very far away from where your mouth is. And if the microphone's right in front of your mouth, then it's going to be reflecting off of the monitor and, going right into your camera. It would be a weird setup. It would be a little bit strange to use that microphone right in front of your face.
So for whatever reason, people feel the need to become apologists for products that they either like or have absolutely no connection to, but just don't like that I'm being mean to them. And that's whatever. If that's your personality, then that is what it is. But these products, were sent with me saying to them, I will, or I might, I think I say might because it's a form letter, but I might use them or talk about them on the AVRant podcast. Yeah. So they do know when they send this to me. I'm a podcaster. I've been doing it for years. It's not that hard to look up the podcast. It's not like it's hidden someplace in the dark web. That's how it's going to be used. And I question the idea, like, who is the consumer for this product if both of these products need to be right up on your face when you're talking? who is actually using this? Like, what is the use case? So you're not a Twitch streamer because it's got LED lights that are lighting up your face. It has to be within an inch or two in order to work properly. For both mics, I mean, the X, I was giving that one a pass, in a number of ways, because I felt like
even so, though, when you did test it out, not on the podcast, but when you did test it out, talking right into it, like for me, the big problem here is, for the price, there are easy alternatives that under all circumstances sound better than these Cherry mics did. I mean, not necessarily as good as your AT2020 from a distance away. Not every mic is going to sound that good, but there are oodles of alternative mics at the very same price points as these Cherry mics that in all circumstances sound better than the Cherry mics. So that's just tough to overcome.
Right. So you put all of that together, no matter how much you want to apologize for or make excuses for why it's my fault that they didn't sound as good as they could possibly. I think I was using them in a reasonable way. I was not putting them through some extreme tests. I wasn't doing it, in a way that maybe wasn't super. I mean, I did the close-up mic tests before, after and beforehand, in order to see, if this really made a humongous difference. To a certain extent it does, but then you're like, okay, so, the AC in my car works just fine when I'm driving at 25 miles an hour or less. So, if you drive faster than that, then it's your own fault for making the AC not work. Is it though?
Right.
Or should it work?
Oh no, I mean,
in a reasonable way.
I wouldn't be jumping out there to recommend those microphones as the top choice in their price range. That's just not in their price range.
I mean, the Blue Yetis are about that, right? Yeah. Don't they cost about that?
Well, yeah,
they might be more these days.
Yeah, some of the 180 seems to be more typical for the normal one that most people are doing. But I mean, even so, certainly plenty from Audio-Technica, from Shure, from probably not Rode. Rode is usually more expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of other microphones. I mean, from Monoprice,
Blue
right?
Yeti,
Monoprice
I think, started off in this price point, about that price point, and then they've kind of crept up since then. But that's sort of the idea, is like, if you're going to try to break into this thing, I mean, you got to have more than LED lights.
Yeah.
I mean, you just gotta have something more. And there are things I like about it. I really did like the with the R, the mute button.
Yeah,
it was
that's right,
super easy to use, and it. I thought you were gonna have to pound on the thing to get it to work, and you kind of waved your hand over the top, and it magically turned off. It was really nice, and the lights in that case were a great visual representation that this thing was no longer operating, which was great. But if you can't do the thing that mics are supposed to do well, all the bells and whistles aside from that aren't really going to help you.
Or to get it as optimized as it can be, you have to buy a separate adapter and use it with a thing that is not included, right? So that's asking a bit much.
It is. So, yes. Well, let's talk about what we watched.
Okie dokie. I don't see anything on your list. Maybe you'll fill it in as I'm talking here.
I did not.
But yeah, so let's see. I'll go in the order in which I watch things, which is the reverse order of which I wrote it down here. But I mean, speaking of events earlier this week and possibly losing all faith in humanity and the order of things, I watched a movie called I Care a Lot. This is an Amazon Prime original.
Okay.
So starring,
I think I've seen that. That's she's like a for elderly home.
She is named as a court-appointed legal guardian for elderly people who have no representative. And
wow, that was an interesting choice for this week for you, Rob. You were trying to be depressed. Is that what was happening?
Didn't know from the synopsis that it was going to be maybe the most nihilistic, depressing movie I could have possibly watched.
Let's just say she doesn't have a great moral core.
No.
Let's just go with
I would venture more than a sociopath. I think she was an outright psychopath in the way that she was portrayed. So look, starring Rosamund Pike.
Great movie.
Starring Rosamund Pike, Peter Dinklage, Diane Wiest. Excellent acting performances.
Yes.
This is a very competently made movie. It is.
Rob hated it.
well, here's the thing. I respect this movie. It as a work of art, where the goal is to elicit a response from you, to engage you, to have you thinking about that work of art days after you viewed it. Successful on all fronts, but I felt awful throughout watching the entire thing, and afterwards, for days afterwards, I felt horrible.
Yes.
So
if you've seen, for those of you who haven't seen this movie, and I don't necessarily recommend it, because I have seen it as well. Well, that's just it.
Yeah, I mean...
it's a good movie, but I don't necessarily... But if you've accidentally watched a movie like The Bad Lieutenant...
Right.
Or something like that, it is a movie that you watch once and you go, I will never see that. That's just not a movie you buy and put... Like, I don't understand. I understand why people make these movies, because they certainly, like Rob said, they elicit a response, and they give the actors something unique to do. They are challenged because they're not playing the typical characters anymore. They're playing, and I mean, it is hard to watch for sure. Hard to watch.
And because, so just to give the synopsis that you'll see on Amazon Prime if you scroll to this movie, so here is this woman, like I say, a court-appointed legal guardian for elderly people who are now suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's, can't take care of themselves, don't have a representative or a family member that can be named. Court appoints her, but she is a con artist. She is bilking these people for what money they have remaining. So horrible person to begin with, and then, ends up trying to pull this con on the wrong person. That's basically the synopsis that's given. And so from that, you're like, okay, there are many ways that rough synopsis could play out. It could be played as a comedy, right? You could end up with the person who comes after her is like, they're a bad person, but they got the heart of gold, right? We've seen that type of tale play out. This could be a comeuppance story, right? It's filled with catharsis at the end. This could be a redemption story. She starts off seemingly as the worst person in the world, but ends up learning her lesson and changing her way. Like, there's many ways that simple synopsis could play out and could be a fairly traditionally entertaining movie by the end of it, but it just isn't any of those things. Everyone in this movie is horrible. Everyone in this movie has zero compassion. She has managed to find, they key in on like one doctor in particular, one care home director in particular, but it's certainly, not just implied, it's spoken outright. She has this scheme going across multiple people, and nobody has any regret. And the person who comes after her is not somebody we can cheer for, because they're a human trafficker. So like... There is nobody to root for in this movie. There is no good person. It is nihilistic in the sense that, nobody learns anything. Nobody changes their way. Nobody shows an ounce of remorse. It is entirely just greed-driven. That is the only thing that exists seemingly in this entire depiction of the world. And the tiny bit of comeuppance that I don't know if it's just a nugget thrown to the audience at the end is completely empty and devoid of any sort of catharsis, because it's awful too. So, there's no way to call this entertaining. And in a way, I read a bunch of reviews, and there were some people like championing like, oh, it's like a feminist like empowerment story. I'm like, no, it isn't. This movie hates women. It hates every woman in this movie, depicts them as just completely remorseless, amoral, awful people, although that's everybody in this movie. So not, but it is overtly making the point of, wait a second, if our main character was a man, maybe you'd be cheering for him, because we've had lots of criminal protagonists who are unapologetic and stoic and drive forward like a shark no matter what is going on, and audiences seem to love them. I'm like, but none of them were bilking old people out of their last penny, like, and you can make the argument they're taking
horrible.
Yeah, they're taking advantage of other vulnerable people. Yes, I get all that. I can see some defense of it. I'm like, but that doesn't make this a female empowerment story. It definitely doesn't do that. This is,
well, it's not like you root for the male. You don't root for anybody in this movie. You don't root for anybody in the movie, because they're all horrible.
They are all absolutely...
It's not, and it doesn't make any difference which gender they are.
Again, as a work of art, it's kind of like, it does that thing if it turns around on the audience. If it's like, hey, wait a second, if you as the audience member are viewing this and just being like, yeah, just kill them all. They all just deserve to die. And then when somebody does get killed, you're like, that wasn't quite bad enough for them. They kind of deserved worse than death. And it's like, but wait a second, you're just becoming just like all these other people, discompassionate and all that. It's like, okay, I get it. You worked as a work of art. Like, I give it all that respect and credit, which I can understand. Maybe you end up with being like interpreting that review as, well, you have to give it a thumbs up then, don't you? But I'm just like, but it feels awful. So like, look, if that's what you want, if you're after that, then okay. But if you want to be entertained or have any moment of catharsis or enjoy this in any way, then this is not the movie to watch. It is, if you were teetering on the edge of depression, this will push you right over.
It's not. It's not. Yes, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't make you feel good.
No, it does not. And I mean, I kind of laugh at it, laugh about it, talking about it later because it is so awful. So it's when got that going for it, I guess.
When I was in Australia, before we left, I think I remember talking to you guys about this. My wife decided that we were going to drive across the country, and there's this long stretch of road that goes through what's called the Nullarbor Plain, which is 200,000 square kilometers of limestone, the seabed pushed up, right? And there's just nothing. There's nothing for like 4 days of driving.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get on the Nullarbor Plain and start driving, people start waving at you as they go in the opposite direction. Okay. It's like, oh, we're in this together.
Yeah.
We're doing this. I'm almost out and you're going in and we're waving at each other. And it felt good.
Yeah.
It felt good to like wave at people as they drove
Forming
by.
a connection with strangers.
When I got to the other side, I was like, I'm going to keep waving at people. Right. Well, that lasted for like 3 waves before people were like, you can just tell by their reactions. I'm like, what are you doing? Right. But during that experience of waving at people through this tedium of driving through nothing for 4 straight days or whatever it is, it felt good. And that, I think, is what you're experiencing by having watched this movie and being able to talk about it afterwards. Yeah, you're sort of waving at us going, yes, I've been through the same thing you've been through.
Yes, that was I Care a Lot. If you want to hold on to your faith in humanity, don't watch it. But
who's got that anymore? Where's this glass half full person? How are you like are you even on the internet? Like, I don't think you exist.
But as you can tell from how much I have talked about it and how animatedly I've talked about it, there is something to it there in terms of getting a response. So other movie I watched this week was The Creator, which is, to me, available on Disney+. Is that Disney+ in the US too? I'm not sure. Anyway, it was Gareth Edwards' I think, latest movie that was released, sci-fi, starring John David Washington, that's Denzel Washington's son, and Allison Janney. So, this one, better than I kind of expected because there were so many negative reviews about it that I didn't entirely understand. I'm like, I don't know why this garnered a relatively negative response, not like overwhelmingly so, but it seemed like a lot of people were either disappointed or didn't really like this movie. It was made for about $85 million and kind of similar to movies like District 9. The effects on this look way better than you would expect for that budget, which is what most of the praise was for, the praise that was in the reviews. But I mean, there was a lot of comments about like it wasn't particularly original or stuff like that. I'm like, of course, it's using many, many ideas to do with artificial intelligence and simulated human beings and all that type of stuff. We've had Blade Runner. Like we've gone through ideas like this before. The notion that humans end up in a war with simulated AI beings, and the humans are turns out probably more the bad guys than the AI are. All of that's fine, but it was still a good movie. It was still a well told, good, well structured.
I'm sorry, I was trying to figure out why my Skype was making a bunch of noise, so I fixed that. But this is a newer movie, right? It came out last year.
Newer. Yeah, it was like last year. Yeah.
Okay, go.
And I quite liked it. The performances were good. There was an strong emotional through line that had a payoff, had pathos to it. It wasn't all just sunshine and roses at the end and some miraculous ending. Like I liked this movie. I thought as a home theater experience, it was excellent. There's lots of very noticeable HDR use, very, very bright little highlights against dark backgrounds, and then lots of good shadow detail, and then some very beautiful, wide open, bright scenes as well. So visually, really nice to look at. Like I say, for the budget it was made for, very, very impressive, the special effects that were done on here. Lots of robotic characters or cybernetic characters, parts removed, or very good looking motion. There's a sort of what would you call it, anthropomorphic bomb, which is like a highlight hilarious part of this movie.
Okay.
So yeah, there's some standout scenes there. The audio in it is great. The Atmos effects in it are good. So I don't understand the negative reviews for this movie. I guess some people went into it being like, oh, it's a new franchise starter, and then they're like, oh, it wasn't quite as like creative or original as I wanted it to be. But I'm like, but that doesn't mean it was bad. It's not a thumbs down because that's. I think
you can't listen to the internet anymore when it comes to movies.
Just can't.
Basically,
just can't. So I give it a recommendation. I think it's well worth checking out.
All right. So I didn't really watch anything this week. I mostly I've been dealing with some back issues. It started last week and or the week before, and so my back's feeling better over the weekend. It started feeling better, but I've been kind of struggling with that. So we haven't been watching much stuff. Been watching a lot of Olympic trial stuff, which is on YouTube. It's just sometimes pirated, and I feel bad about that.
Right. But it's not available any other way.
If I figure out it's pirated, I stop watching.
Okay.
If I figure that out, because I don't really want to support that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's mostly about what. But what I wanted to, since this is sort of in the vein of what we're talking about here.
Okay.
So Dune was like the highest grossing movie of the year, or Dune 2, sorry.
I guess
for a really long time.
Yeah.
Right, and then Inside Out 2
Inside Out 2. It is a juggernaut.
I think it finally passed it.
Oh, it did, yes.
I was starting to believe, perhaps erroneously, that that was some sort of portent for the movie industry, that Dune 2 being the biggest movie for so long, like nothing else was able to unseat it, which it used to be. It seems like every summer blockbuster, like maybe every third one would not be a hit, but then they would all sort of kind of compete.
And the movies that came out in May this year didn't set the box office on fire, so people were getting worried.
Yeah, and then Inside Out 2 came out, and of all of them, I was like, Inside Out 2, this is going to be on Disney Plus in a couple of months. People aren't going to go to the movies to see this thing, and it exploded.
Yep.
So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the fact, does that mean something? Do you think that means something for the movie industry? Do we see that this whole Dune 2 lasting for so long at the top of the box office for the year until, almost July, Inside Out 2 coming out and it being a Pixar movie, that is going to be available fairly soon on Disney Plus. Does that what do you think that means, Rob?
I actually think it's a little bit more, cause, people are often like, okay, it's just about how good the movies are, or how good was the last one, and people base what they're going to think the sequel is like off the last one, whatever it is. I'm like, no, actually, what I think went on here was Inside Out 2, from everything that I came across, used very traditional marketing. Tried and true marketing, TV ads, billboards, bus stop signs, went back to traditional marketing, and what do you know? Traditional marketing still works. Because a lot of the movies that came out earlier this year and disappointed in their box office takes, they eschewed a lot of traditional marketing and went nothing but social media. And I'm like, you know what? Social media is a small representation, very, very vocal, but a small representation of the actual market that's out there. And I don't think putting all of your marketing effort only into social media and forgetting about all traditional marketing pays off. I think the evidence is here now. Inside Out 2 was like straight down the line traditional marketing, and it's within 3 weeks the biggest movie of the year. I don't know. I'm putting 2 and 2 together.
So I guess that's interesting that you say 2 and 2 because these are both sequels as well.
Yeah, well,
so
I mean,
how much
people literally didn't know that Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was in theaters. Normal people didn't know that movie existed.
So I was in Turkey last year when the Indiana Jones crap one came out, and there were billboards everywhere for it. In Turkey, I don't understand why that was the case. Yeah. And I don't know how big that movie was in relation to the rest of these things. I think you've got a point in that, just people need to know that something exists before they can...
People need to know when it's in theaters, that it exists, and when it's available to watch.
Yeah, and spreading it across social media is one thing. Yeah. And that does certainly get the word out.
And I mean, I'm including YouTube in there too, which, I mean, it's difficult to argue that people aren't watching YouTube, but I'm like, but wait a second. Like you look at the most popular YouTube channels.
Yeah. Yeah,
people are skipping ads whenever they can. You can't tell me that people are miraculously sitting through 90-second ads or 60-second ads as soon as they get the opportunity to skip, including when it's a movie trailer, that they're not skipping it. But it's like, you're getting these 19 million, 20 million views. They're like, no TV program is getting 19 or 20 million views. I'm like, all TV programs in aggregate together aren't getting that? Yeah, they are, and more, right? You're seeing 19 million views on one YouTube channel. That's just their channel. That's it. It's like one show. And granted, there's no single TV show that's giving you viewership like that. But if you spread your movie trailer ads across all of television, there are more than 19 million people watching all of television or seeing billboards, that type of stuff. So, yeah, my argument is that traditional marketing still works.
Okay. I'm just trying to look at this. Look at how the theaters are going, because as you guys know, listeners of this podcast, I'm a big advocate of just like direct to home. I don't want to go to the theaters anymore. I don't like going to the theaters. It's not fun for me. I'm not interested. But if you take away the big release dates with these huge box office numbers, are we going to have the budgets for the big movies that we enjoy? Are we going to have the budgets to make things like, Avatar movies, and not that I really care about that, but what I'm saying, Marvel movies and Dune movies and even Inside Outs, that sort of thing. I mean, these are not small budget movies. They command a lot of money. So is there a symbiotic relationship there with the movie theaters? And what does it mean if they do in fact go away and people don't have to leave their house to go to these movies, or stop leaving their house to these movies? So we'll just leave that there. We'll let you guys maybe chime in the comments, or send us some emails, or hey, YouTube, I know I told you to shut up. You can talk now.
No, I mean, I think the general notion of paradigms have to be broken and changed. Everything needs to be shifted. If it's new, it's automatically better. I'm like, there's a lot of pushback against that in every sector of our lives, where it's like, do we really want the interface on our smartphone to change every 3 months? Like, most people just leave it alone. Like, I just got used to how something worked. Leave it alone. Quit changing stuff. Quit saying that everything needs to be broken apart and put back together in some new and amazing way. It's like, we don't need that. The only people who are complaining that our phones don't look radically different from year to year are, the tech reporter and reviewers who are getting bored with like, it turns out a flat rectangle is the best shape for a smartphone, and we don't need to reinvent it every few months. Like, most people don't need things to change that much, and I genuinely believe that goes for movies and the movie-going experience. I think there is a pushback, and when you just let people feel a little bit comfortable, like they don't have to grasp with an entirely new way of doing things, that they'll actually be kind of thankful for it at this point.
There's a very large segment of our voting population that doesn't like new things.
Right.
I don't know if you're aware of this. Yeah. When my parents couldn't get their YouTube app to work, they just stopped watching YouTube.
Right.
Like, that was it. They were just like,
that's it.
This is too hard. I'm not doing it anymore. Like, okay.
But we changed it all, so it must be better. I don't agree.
All right. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to our website, find our show notes, our Flickr albums, so you can follow along with the pictures as well as the audio and previous episodes. So go check that out, avrant.com. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast. You can follow us there, YouTube.com/AVRant, where apparently we're getting lots of engagement because I've been using bad mics. That's the meta. That's the new meta. I gotta use bad mics, and people come on and say that sucks. Okay.
Yeah, somebody said, "Hey, just use a new mic every single week."
I know, right?
That'll get
I
old
do
quick,
it.
too.
I don't care. I mean, so part of it is the content, and I am annoyed by bad mics as well. So I apologize to all of you for doing it. I really didn't think that they were going to be bad. And
should be better this week.
It should be. Jeez. Maybe I don't know how to set up this mic
It
anymore.
sounds better over Skype anyway, I'll tell you that much.
You can contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His social media is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. I'm going to thank our listeners of the week to become a listener of the week. Support the podcast in some way. If you want to do that financially, you can go to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and that'll send you to a PayPal donation site. We want to thank Raph for doing that this week. Thank you very much, Raph.
Yeah, that's nice to see. Raph, thank you very much for your PayPal donation. We appreciate your financial support.
Yeah, so we also, if you want to do a monthly subscription, I just read down a little bit and I'm laughing. A monthly subscription, you can do that on PayPal, but more likely you want to do it on Patreon, patreon.com/AVRant podcast. 134 patrons currently, and thank you to all of you.
That's right. Tom was a little unsure, but it is patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So holding steady there at 134 patrons. Thank you very much for your continued support.
So tomandrew.com was my personal website for where I put books and stuff up there. And the hosting company that I've been using for them for years keeps raising their prices, and they are impossible to get in contact with. They're just awful. So I've been trying for the last 2 or 3 years to switch it to GoDaddy or whatever I'm using. I don't remember which one. HostGator? One of those. I don't know.
HostGator sounds right. I hope it's not GoDaddy.
I don't know which one it is. It's something.
HostGator rings a bell.
So I've been trying to switch it for years, and every time I try to switch it, they like, oh, you need to do this, and I do it. Oh, well, now you need to do this, and I do it. And now you got to do this, and I do it. And they're like, well, we sent you an email to this email address. I'm like, well, I didn't get it. And then that's it. It stops there every year. So I just gave up, and I just let the website die, essentially. So Mark noticed that. So at least one person in the last forever has gone to this website and let me know that now it's, I don't know, doing something with
it's a Chinese gambling website.
Yep. Was a website or something. Whatever it is, it's not me anymore. So that's unfortunate. Now I will create another website for myself.
Sure.
Eventually.
We should probably remove that tomandrew.com link from our
It
website,
is. It should be removed from everything now.
Okay.
I think.
All right.
So there's a plugin I use on our website for the end of each show, where it has all the links to stuff.
Yeah.
And I did that years ago. And so you put the it's basically like a code in there, and it just grabs the text. So you can go back and change that text, and every post that had the links is now changed.
Okay.
So all those links
The little
are gone.
side navigation panel had a link, though, too. I'm not sure if that was removed.
Oh, I don't know if I did that.
Yeah, because that was still there when I checked it the other day.
Okay, yeah. Remind me to do that after the podcast, and we'll fix that one. Thank you,
But
Rob.
thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes, I didn't know about any of that stuff, so I just thought he was hacked or something, but nope.
No,
that's the explanation.
I was screwed over by my hosting site. He was like, you keep giving us $134 a year for your stupid website. I'm like, it's not worth $134 a year. That's like more than $1 a person that visits it, and I'm the person. We also got notes of gratitude from keeping the podcast going from Sasi, Joe, Paul, Vince, and Brad. Thank you for thanking us.
Yeah, I'll say those names one more time. Sasi, Joe, Paul, Vince, and Brad. Thank you very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. We definitely appreciate them, and a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
All right, so Rob was depressed after his movie watching experience this week, so we're going to start with some happy news. Almost immediately after Sony Pictures Experiences announced they are buying the Alamo Drafthouse theater chain, they announced they have purchased all 5 of the Dallas-Fort Worth locations and the one Twin Cities location that were recently and abruptly shut down by their former franchise owner, and all 6 locations will reopen as soon as possible this summer.
Yeah.
Anyone who had pre-purchased tickets or were owed ticket refunds will be emailed 1-year vouchers. Any previously ordered merchandise will be available to pick up once these locations reopen. Merchandise? What is it?
Yeah.
Drafthouse merchandise? Okay.
That's and
T-shirts or whatever?
Movie tie-in memorabilia and all kinds of stuff.
Okay. Okay. Season Pass members will be given a free month, and any former employees will be made whole for lost wages. So there you go.
Yeah.
Sony doing right by somebody.
It all sure seems like positive news.
Waiting for the other shoe to drop.
No, but this is nice. It's nice to see that. Quickly too. There was no delay in this. As soon as it was all announced they're like, yep, those locations that closed down. There were many people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, particularly, who were very disappointed because that was easily their favorite, theater going experience was the Alamo Drafthouse. So having those, there was very, very little warning. It was just kind of like, we're done, we're out. These locations are all closed, like effective immediately type of thing. It was a shock to the system for a lot of people who were fans there. So very good news. It's not instantaneous. They have to do some refurbishment, and I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of rebranding and stuff that goes on, but it's not going to be a long delay. Should be back for they want them back open for the summer blockbuster season, right? So they're gonna get their tails moving, and that's good. Happy to hear it.
So in less happy news, we have the least surprising update ever. Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment, the company that bought Redbox in 2022, and Crackle from Sony in 2019 has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy after disclosing that they have $970 million in debt, $414 million in assets, and have been unable to refinance while owing over 500 creditors.
Yeah.
Jesus.
500 creditors. I'm not sure how that happens, but I don't know.
Let's just all remember that if you miss one payment on anything, you will get angry phone calls. And how does this happen? How does this happen? And
business
they can have business to business stuff like this, and it just happens. Anyways, the value of their shares has fallen over 9%, and they've defaulted on payments while facing multiple lawsuits. Yeah. I did write an article on AV Gadgets. I don't even think it went up before this happened. Like, I wrote it and then scheduled it to go live, and I think by the time it went live, the Chapter 11 bankruptcy is just basically like, rent from Redbox now.
So, yeah,
now's your chance.
I'm pretty sure I have a solution for them, which is they just have to change the name of their company to Chicken Soup for the AI, and it'll all be fixed.
And it'll be fixed.
That's it. Infinite money flowing in, don't have to produce anything, steal everything, don't pay anybody, solved.
Oh, that's and then use AI Scarlett Johansson to be your spokesperson,
right?
Because that works. That works. All right. Tidal continues to streamline their service in an effort to get costs under control, but their latest bit of news is sure to upset at least a few customers. Moving forward, they were only making the Tidal app available via Apple TV. Remind me to talk about the Apple TV 4K.
Okay.
In a second.
That's not the end of that sentence, by the way. It's not only Apple TV. There are more.
Tidal app available via Apple TV, Google Android TV, and over AirPlay and Chromecast for iOS and Android devices. They have removed their app from the Roku and Fire TV. They've warned that the app is being removed from Samsung Smart TVs July 8th, and while LG WebOS, that was hard to say, WebOS app still works for now, they removed any mention of it from their website. So
I wouldn't expect that that's long for this world either at that rate.
Yeah. And that's just, that's just a manpower thing. They got to focus on where they're getting the most streams from. Yeah. And I can kind of understand that. Yeah. Not only that, but like AirPlay and Chrome available from AirPlay, that just makes it easy for people to do it with other things, which makes sense to me.
Oh yeah, no, I was listening to a podcast, CEO talking from a streaming company, and they're just like, the number of different platforms that they need to support, like if they want to be ubiquitous, just available wherever you might want to stream their content, we're going to have our app there. It's like, it's a lot of different platforms. Now, look, it's not like they have to literally write everything from scratch, right? You can translate, but it's still, you need software engineers to do that. For every update that they push out, they have to make sure that it works across all of these different platforms. Tidal is just saying, look, we're gonna focus on the biggest ones. We're gonna have as good an experience as we're able to muster on those ones, and everything else that, because the percentages are right there. Everybody can track, where are the people listening to this stuff. And so they're like, look, yeah, obviously some percentage of people are using Roku devices or Fire TV or Samsung Smart TVs, whatever it might be, but obviously those percentages are much lower than Android phones and iOS devices, and then Apple TV and all the many devices that use either Google TV or Android TV. So they took the biggest share percentages and are focusing everything there. I don't think that there's anything about that doesn't make sense. If you're trying to cut some costs, that absolutely makes sense. But of course, it's going to upset some people because they were using a Roku device and they didn't have any intention of using anything else, and now they'll have to.
Yeah, and I do want to say that even though I understand why it doesn't work, it irritates me that I can't cast my YouTube that I'm watching on my phone to the Apple TV 4K's YouTube app. It won't.
That doesn't work?
No, it doesn't show up at all.
Really?
On there, I get the LG TV. I get my receiver. I think maybe I get the Sony Ultra HD Blu-ray player, and I get one other thing. I don't know what it is.
So I'm assuming your Android phone doesn't have AirPlay, because there are some Android phones that support AirPlay.
Mine's a Pixel 5.
Okay,
so I'm a couple years behind.
I thought there was still a way to cast.
I'm gonna have to. I can't figure it. I haven't figured it. I have literally tried twice, so let's not say that it's
There's
not
probably some third-party Chromecast supporting app that you can load onto your Apple TV to make that work. There's got to be a way, but interesting.
Sweet. Arendal Sound has announced their newest series of speakers. Don't get too excited just yet, as details are scarce, but they have made a few details available. That's 2 details in 2 sentences, which is one too many details. Arendal used to offer their original 1723 series, named for when the city of Arendal in Norway was first officially given full town status, and their less expensive 1961 series, named for when an important bridge was opened. It's really, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't love the names. I don't hate them because they're fairly easy to. They're not like a stupid to say. Sure. You can say them easily, but it doesn't help me understand what I'm buying.
Yeah, it doesn't describe the product. Yeah.
They all but discontinued the 1961 series. Only a single tower model and a couple of subwoofer models remain in that lineup. And they added the 1723S series, which are just slightly more compact versions.
S for small. That's right.
Now they've announced the 1528 series. Going backwards in time is not helping the situation.
Yeah. That would kind of make sense. So they actually kind of need to keep that 1961 around to help you notice what the pattern is. But yeah,
I guess so. They announced the new 1528 series will be available by the end of the year. The new series is named for when Arendal was first mentioned in historical records. Literally, every time anybody who has ever said this is what we know from history, somebody immediately finds something new that's older,
right?
Almost immediately.
Well, they need it, because if they're going to go, they're going to go further, they have to find an even earlier mention.
They're describing it as a new luxury series that does not replace their 1723 speakers, but is a high-end range above them, positioned in a different price category to compete with flagship models from other brands. What will the models and prices be? We have no idea yet, but they do mention that 1528 series will be for both 2-channel audiophiles and home theater fans, as are all good speakers.
But it's just indicating that, it's not going to only be tower speakers or something like that. Because there's some, right? There's many speaker companies that all they make is like 1 or 2 pairs of towers, and that's it. There's no center speakers. There's no bookshelf or wall mountable or anything, right?
So there'll be more than just pairs of tower speakers. They'll be more expensive than the other things that they offer.
That's right.
But like Rob said, you'll have like the monster tower speakers, but there'll also be a center and surrounds and Atmos speakers.
We're making an educated guess at that, but that certainly seems to be what they're hinting at.
They don't want potential customers to just wait and put off buying any Arendal speakers in the meantime, though, so they should have shut their dang mouths. So they are now offering a 1-year premium upgrade program. If you purchase any current speakers directly from them, you can decide to upgrade to a more expensive Arendal speakers within a year. You buy the new speakers, you pay the return shipping, and they will refund your initial purchase minus 15% minus 15%.
Uh-huh.
So not exactly risk-free, but probably
No.
enough of a deal that if you're curious about the 1528 series when they become available, it would probably be just easier to justify. It would probably be easier to justify at least an in-home audition. I mean that's a lot of asterisks after that upgrade program thing, because you're paying the return
not
shipping.
Free. It is out of pocket for sure. Yeah.
The return shipping on some of these things is like not cheap.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got tower speakers.
Yeah, well, they were, they gave the example, right? You buy $1,000 pair of speakers today, and then you decide that you want to get these 1528, whatever they cost, $2,500 or something in the future. They're like, okay, so you pay the $2,500 up front, you buy the new speakers as if you were just buying the new speakers, and then you contact them and you're like, hey, within the past year, I bought this $1,000 pair of Arendal speakers from you. Can I basically send those back because I'm buying these new ones to replace them? They're like, yes, but we'll give you $850 back, not $1,000 back, and you have to pay for shipping it back to us. So, those are the out-of-pocket expenses.
You get like maybe 60% back.
Right.
In the end.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how much shipping of towers are, but they're probably not cheap. Comments from our listeners. Infinite Gary. Now they've had a chance to get used to his 55-inch G3 OLED following its professional calibration and lowering its OLED light setting down to 5 out of 100.
Yup. All that worthwhile MLA technology.
It is dim. He has decided to keep it. He really does like its super flush wall mount. So there you go.
That's it.
Infinite Gary's happy. It's some Mercury is in retrograde or something because he's finally satisfied with something. But it's a little bit bigger than the TV it replaced, so his old center speaker stand was ever so slightly too high, and it made his Revel Ultima Voice 2 center speaker
along with a 55-inch TV. I like it.
Which ought to be massive overkill for this setup, but it's the only center that he has ever fully satisfied him. Jesus,
That's
Gary,
right.
you're making it sound too sexual. It covered a tiny portion of the bottom edge of his image. So he went to Montana Woodworks to get a custom Jacobian stained and lacquered speaker stand. My Lord.
Yep. There it is.
There it is.
Very
If you're
nice.
looking at the YouTube or the Flickr albums, you will see it. It is wood. That's what it looks like. I bet it looks. This is very hard to see. This picture is not great, but it's very hard to see. It's wood sitting on top of a hardwood floor, so it kind of blends a little bit. So it's whatever. So I imagine in person this is a completely different experience. Let's not judge it by the pictures. He thinks it's gorgeous, and it is the perfect height for a custom. It's a custom stand, and it's the perfect height.
But I mean, he measured correctly. That's a nice confirmation.
That is. I mean,
it doesn't always work out that way.
Honestly, I would have had somebody else measure it because I definitely would.
Well, and also handmade. Sometimes there's a quarter-inch wiggle room or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So it's leaving zero visible wall between the top and bottom of the speaker, top of the speaker and the bottom of the TV bezel, but not covering any of the image at all. In its final position, you really can't see the TV stand at all, and the beautiful finish of the Revel Voice 2 speaker is intentionally covered with black cloth, so there's no image reflection from the TV. But he knows those gorgeous finishes are there, and that's what matters.
That's right.
My God.
There was no less expensive option for getting the speaker height just right. There was no way to
What
do
is this
it.
A table in front of it?
It's
Is
a
this
kitchen table.
So it's blowing the center channel is blowing underneath the kitchen table.
More or less, it looks what it looks like. Yeah,
This is a folding plastic table. You know
I know.
that, right?
it looks.
This
like...
is it's a portable folding plastic table that you get from Sam's or Walmart or whatever. I got mine from Sam's.
I'm laughing not at you, Gary. I'm laughing because I love all of this. I think this is hilariously awesome that you do all of this. That's what I'm chuckling at. So please.
In what world do you not mount the center speaker above the TV so that it actually is hitting your face?
I am very amused by all of this, so I enjoy it a great deal.
What are these speakers? Are these Revels as well?
No, those aren't Revels. I'm forgetting. They might be Dyne Audios, I think. I think they're Dyne
Audios. They
Audios.
look like Dyne Audios, those drivers.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I like it. Congratulations, Gary. You found something that works.
Got some questions here. Let's start with those. I need to get a drink. My coffee ran out, and I couldn't find my water glass.
There's no way to predict or how much you're going to need or anything from week to week. It's It's completely...
I couldn't find my water glass, and my coffee ran out because...
Can't be planned for.
You were talking too much about that stupid movie.
Yes, right.
It's your fault.
Always.
Americans are very good at blaming Canadians for things. I don't know if you've noticed. Venture to say our entire political discourse in our country because of something Canada did. Right. Some sort of Canadian
that must
plot.
Have been it.
Mike figured he's been sending us quite a few emails lately, so he'll send us a photo and description of his home theater. He's in Chicago and built his theater room in his basement on the cheap. It's 10 feet wide, 18 feet long, and only 6 feet 8 inches high. Sounds like it is a basement. Okay. The ceiling drops even lower to just 6 feet at the back. The floor is just painted concrete and there's a lot of justs in the sentence. Regular 2x4 studs with a single layer of drywall. He did hang the cheapest solid core door he could find. But there's no dedicated air return for the HVAC, so there's still a small gap under the door. I live in the same world that you do, except mine wasn't the cheapest. It was the only one I could find. He says, no effort was made to control the rattles or vibration or sound leakage, all due to price, but he put a bunch of acoustic panels. He's taken measurements of Rubik's Cube Wizards, and he's got no complaints. The only thing he sort of feels he got wrong is that he discovered his second row of seats on a riser needed more space behind the front row than he initially planned. Otherwise, they couldn't recline comfortably, so the top rear speakers aren't behind the back row anymore, and anyone stepping up onto that riser really needs to watch their head since the ceiling is lower at the back of the room too. He has made a warning sign. Watch your step, watch your head, watch the sides. Anyways, that's on the warning sign.
Yep.
Watch everything, damn it. That's what it says on the sign.
Right. That's the one you need.
That's the... And just before the reveal, he wanted Tom to know he followed his 2 cardinal rules: paint everything black and cram as many speakers as you possibly can in a small room. That's right. Yes, I already hate it. Oh my
Lord. Listened.
That is a lot of speakers in there. My God. Okay, Flickr album or a YouTube channel. You need to go see this. This is built specifically to trigger me.
Oh yes, he knew well.
The LED lights really kind of tie the whole room together. I'm gonna be honest with you.
He does have some mentions of that too.
I do like the fact that the entire room's black, but all the acoustic panels are white. That's nice.
Yeah. Contrast.
I went through the trouble to paint every surface in this room black and then put white acoustic panels up because suck it. His screen is 92-inch, I appreciate. Acoustically transparent silver ticket, thanks to our recommendation of that brand, which you wouldn't have known about otherwise. The projector is the Optima UHZ50 with the laser light engine. It might look like it's in a hush box, but that's actually the bash box he made so that people would hit their heads on that instead of directly on the projector. Read the sign.
Yeah, read the sign.
He put spikes on it just to make sure.
Not quite the pigeon spikes just yet, but getting there.
Movie's looking great. The 3D movies are a crowd pleaser when he has people over. Don't lie. First of all, you don't have people over. Second of all, 3D movies suck. The Marantz SR8015 receiver handles all the processing and some of the amplification. 5 of his speakers are powered by an Emotiva Basax A5 amplifier, which he bought just because he likes to hear me say it. His main left and right speakers are a pair of Salk Sound B Pure 2 towers that Jim Salk built himself just before he retired. I like it when people say that they built them themselves, because I don't think they did.
I mean, in the case of Salk Sound, he might have literally hand-assembled those cabinets, Jim Salk himself.
Might have.
That is entirely possible, because
I've dealt with him before, and he is. I like the speakers that I've listened to that were Salk Sound speakers were very good, and I like them. They were also the only tweeter I ever exploded.
You're right.
So put it to you that way.
That wasn't the speaker's fault.
No, that was not. That we can blame. I don't remember who sent me that test tone. There's an Arendal 1723 center behind the projection screen. Have you tried the Revel one? Apparently, it's the only one that satisfies.
The only one.
The only one.
But he's got those Arendals. I think he's bought them more than a year ago, though, so he won't be able to get 85% back for the if he goes to the 1528.
Minus shipping.
Yes.
All of his other speakers are the smaller, now discontinued Arendal 1961 bookshelf speakers. He's got front wides. Does he, though?
He sure
Where are
does.
the front wides?
Yep.
Those are the ones... I see them.
Yep.
I see them.
They're within sort of a little cubby shelf in his sidewall and angled.
He's got front rides, 2 pairs of side surrounds, so there are 15 speakers in total for his home theater setup. He managed to fit 4 SVS SB2000 subs in there, 1 in each corner. He also uses this room for music production, so he's got a computer setup with various amps and effects pedals, another pair of studio monitors, which is the speakers I was looking at. They're in their bookshelf speakers lined on their side on the inside of the tower speakers. I think they're tower speakers, yes. He's also got a computer setup with various amps, effects pedals, and a pair of studio monitors, and some groovy lighting. There's the groovy lighting.
Yep.
I do like the groovy lighting.
I know.
Oh, there's the effects pedals. Those are cool.
Color change strips.
Hey, look at that stool. Don't show it to Infinite Gary.
I know, right?
It's got a beautiful finish that you should put a black cloth over so you can't see it. Sources are a Zidu Z20 with a NAS to feed it, PS5, and pretty much every streaming stick out there. As far as you can tell, the sub measurements and decay times look pretty great. They do. We can see the graph here. If you'd like
we
to
do
see
have a graph coming up, yeah.
Looks pretty good. So he's really happy with what he's been able to put together within his budget, and maybe that will inspire other people out there. That will inspire them to buy black room treatments, though. I think that's the inspiration I got from it. So, good job, man. This whole thing. I can't believe you got 4 subwoofers in there. I can't believe people can walk in here at all. I'll be honest with you. I feel like you need like a forklift to like deliver you to your seat. He does have a question to ask. He warns this might be overthinking things, but he's read a lot about how to optimize his 4-speaker setup, 4-subwoofer setup, and the topic of level matching has him scratching his head a bit. Some people say to position the 4 subs in their intended locations, measure each one at a time from his main listening position, and level match all 4 subs that way. But other people warn that each sub might have different room modes if you do it that way and could throw off the level matching. Some suggest that you close mic each sub one at a time and measure the levels that way. I don't understand.
Out.
That one's not right.
We'll explain in a bit.
And then some say to stack all 4 subs in the same location at first, measure from the main seat, level match all 4 subs that way, co-located, and then move them to their actual positions in the room. Is any of that actually worthwhile? Any tips on how you should go about optimizing his subwoofer level matching? Well, first of all, I don't understand the stack all 4 of them in one location and then move them. That doesn't.
So I mean, that's just
sense to me.
Or rotate them one at a time.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think I'll just skip to the end first because it's the easiest thing to say, which is you bought 4 identical subwoofers from SVS. Yeah. So you can, I mean, I know there's going to be somebody out there who's like, well, from unit to unit, it's possible that if you set, all of them to 73 on the digital readout volume dial, that they aren't actually perfectly, within 0.25 of a decibel actually matching. But I'm like, those SVS digitally controlled volume controls are pretty darn uniform across every single unit that you might buy. So in your particular instance, you can basically just rely on the digital volume readout on your SVS sub, set them all to be equal, and just go from there. Now, we talked about this with Todd Welty when he was on this podcast. Like, we want to start with all 4 of your subwoofers outputting the exact same volume level from the signal that they're receiving. And in your room, in all likelihood, that is going to work perfectly as intended. But there are sometimes instances, we've come across this in real world experience, where you do that theoretically perfect setup of all of my subwoofers are outputting exactly the same level, all being fed a mono signal. But when you sit in your seat, you're like, but I can plainly notice that like the rear left sub is just more noticeable than the other 3 subs. Something's got to give, and we're not going to say, well, just because theoretically it should work really well, that actually is optimal. And that's where we end up doing manually tailored level matching so that you don't have 1 or more subs noticeably sticking out above or below the rest of them. That isn't what is supposed to happen. So in all likelihood, given your enclosed, small, rectangular room with 4 subwoofers positioned in the corners and all 4 of those subs are identical SVS models, there's very little likelihood that anything other than just setting them to where they visually say on their volume dial that they're all equal is anything necessary. But all of those other explanations, I want to dispense with the most obviously wrong one, which is the idea of close miking them in your room.
Yes.
Absolutely will not work.
No.
What happened there is you can close mic a speaker and measure a speaker with the microphone very close to it in a room. You have to gate the response. You have to truncate how long the measurement takes so that it's like less than, what is it, 200 milliseconds or something like that?
No.
But basically all you're trying to do is make it so that the measurement window that the microphone is listening is only open long enough that a sound wave literally doesn't have time to travel the distance from the speaker down to the floor and back up to the mic, because the floor is probably the closest boundary that you're going to have, or to any wall, reflect off of that surface and make its way to the mic. If you just cut off the measurement before that reflection can happen there, then you have a semi-anechoic measurement for those frequencies. But it 100% doesn't work at bass frequencies. There is no possibility of measuring a bass frequency in a room that doesn't include a reflection, because you have to keep the measurement window open long enough to at least get one cycle of that bass wave. And if we're talking about a 20 hertz wave, then you have to let it travel 55 feet.
Yes.
That you have to have it open for at least 1/20th of a second, and actually a little bit before that and after that, just to make the measurement actually viable. And so there's no way to avoid that there some sound has reflected off a wall and made it back to the microphone at that point. So the close miking technique 100% does not work for subwoofers in a room. That just flatly is wrong. So the other ones, right, the idea of I'm going to either stack them all in the same location or I'm going to rotate them one at a time into the same location and measurement there, like, that is fine. That is going to get you so that with the same signal playing out of each sub, they're all at least starting at the very same volume level. And if you had a mix of slightly different subwoofer models, then maybe that's where you would do that. Right? Or you really didn't trust that your 4 identical model numbers, from unit to unit, too much variation, I suppose. So out of all of them, that's maybe theoretically the most quote unquote correct way to do it, because that is making sure that the what comes out of each sub is going to be identical in response to the same signal being fed to all of them. But realistically, particularly in your case, we're just going to set them, visually by the indicator first, but then afterwards, you do need to sit down, listen to a bass sweep playing, and if you're like, wait a second, I just noticed the front right sub, then you're going to have to manually do it in situ. With those subwoofers placed where they are, you tailoring the response from your listening position, whether that's by measurement or honestly by ear at that point, is probably what makes even more sense, because the measurements can lead you astray, right? The measurements can tell you, by the measurements, all of my 4 subwoofers are level matched at my primary seat now, and yet when I sit down and listen, the back sounds louder than the front. Well, who cares what your measurements say at that point? So, that's where I land on all of that.
That's fine.
Okay.
I would usually just level match them with that's what I do in my theater, just level match them. And I think with a SPL meter from my seat. But I think I end up, when I did it most recently, which was not that long ago, I was like, oh, the volume knobs are in the same location. That's
yes. So
that seemed coincidental to me at the time. And I'm like, okay.
The other thing I can mention, we know that you already have Room EQ Wizard and have used it.
You can do MSO.
Yeah, so you could do, multi-sub optimizer. That is one way to go. Using a mini DSP 2x4 HD would be the easiest way to upload all of that, so that you can add one more thing into this room if you want to. There could be justification for it. But also, if this is just a manual procedure and you're looking to level match 4 subwoofers without stacking them all in one location or rotating them and just doing it where they live, most of the talk about, well, the reason you shouldn't do that is because of room modes. If you're measuring one subwoofer at a time in situ, you might end up getting erroneous results because some of them have a room mode and they measure much too loud or they measure much too quiet versus what's actually going on. But that's only if you're doing, sort of the way that Odyssey sets its levels, which is playing pink noise, right? Playing multiple frequencies simultaneously. You, with Room EQ Wizard, what you could do is play a sweep through each of them one at a time. You're going to see ups and downs, right? From each subwoofer will have slightly different ups and downs because they're in 4 different locations in your room. But there will be some frequencies where you're like, oh yeah, that's very clearly not a room mode for any of my 4 subs. At whatever given frequency, all of them are responding without any clear up or down in response to the room. So then you could just play a test tone at that one specific frequency from one sub at a time and measure and level match them all based on that one frequency that you can see in your graph is, not artificially boosted or cut because of the room response. So rather than using pink noise at that point, you could just use a single test tone. So that's another way to do it.
All right. William, a couple of weeks ago, William told us about his somewhat narrow but long room in his basement, 11 feet 3 inches wide and 48 feet long by 8 feet high. He was considering building a wall to make the theater area 11.3 wide by 22 feet long with a sliding door in the new wall. He was hoping that putting in the wall would help improve his acoustics and audio performance, and wanted to know if we thought he should proceed or just leave the room as is. We strongly advise against getting a sliding door in favor of a regular swinging door and warned about HVAC and lighting considerations. But we also said that depending on what was going on at the back of the room and how this basement room connected to the rest of the house, it might be better to just leave things alone. So we sent in some photos to provide a little more context. Now that we have a chance to look at those, what do we think? Build a wall to cut this long room in half or leave it open the way it is? Well, there's a staircase at the back of the
There is a staircase at the back there. There's also clearly either a closet or perhaps a door that goes elsewhere at the back there. However, in the front section where the theater area is set up, there is an opening over to the left that he never told us about before. That doesn't appear to have any sort of doorway on that opening to the left, which I assume is going to.
Oh, is that what that is? Oh, I did.
Sure, looks like that.
I did not see that. Yeah, it does definitely.
Other part of the basement or a basement washroom or something or else is going on there. There's an opening without a door on it to the left of the section.
But that doesn't count because he doesn't consider that part of the theater.
Right. And we can see HVAC registers exactly where I predicted they would be, one at the front of this room where his theater area is, and another at the back of the room by what looks like the built-in fluorescent light, because I don't think that's a skylight in a basement. And then lighting, seems to be that built-in fluorescent light at the back, and then wall sconces on the side there, which I imagine are all on the same circuit.
Right.
So I don't know where the air return in this room is. I'm betting, being in the basement, it actually goes down that opening to the left because your utility room is probably over there. Again, we don't know for sure. We don't have literally all the details here. But that easily could be the case.
So now you get to build 2 walls.
Right. Yes, that's where we've ended up here. That's the upshot here. If you want to enclose this space and right now he's got 2 subwoofers that, just eyeballing them, I don't think have enough output to pressurize this entire open space that you have right now. That's pretty clearly obvious. And for, aesthetic reasons and layout reasons, it makes sense that he's put them in the front of the theater area for right now, but that is not going to be optimal placement. This can be improved upon with the construction of now walls plural, because of that opening on the left. But this has made the job bigger than I think. I'm inferring from his original email that he thought this was a pretty cheap and quick and easy thing to do. And I'm like, there are more considerations here. I am not saying don't do it. I'm just saying you're going to have to budget more for it. That's
So you need to close off the opening to the left of the theater area. You need to close off behind the theater area and put a door in both. And then you need to consider how you're going to get air in and out of this place, and then maybe even some electrical rewiring to make sure that the lights are on different circuits.
Yeah, I mean, getting the lighting fixed, that's easy. And, if you aren't prepared to do that yourself, hiring an electrician to do that is not going to be particularly expensive unless you want to install more lights. But, you could also use lamps if there isn't enough
that's the easiest way. Just take the light bulb out of the sconce.
But, just having the sconce that's at the front of the room versus the sconce that's at the back of the room on separate controls. I mean, any electrician can quite easily do that for not a crazy amount of money. But I am not going to say, come back and ask Tom and Rob what to do about your HVAC, because the only thing we can say is talk to an HVAC professional. You must talk to an HVAC professional about this. Now, chances are the easiest thing that's going to happen is, okay, you end up constructing, a wall to close off that opening on the left of the room. You end up constructing the wall at the back of the room. You have doors in those walls, and you will simply need to leave gaps under those doors.
Probably.
But the HVAC professional very well might tell you, hey, even if you leave gaps under the doors, it's not going to be enough cubic feet of air that are able to get through here every minute to actually match what's going on in these now
if that is
closed
an air
off spaces
handler
of the room.
back there, yes.
That's right.
Yeah, because it's got to pull a ton of air through, and those are usually louvered doors,
right,
at the very least,
yes,
if not just like a big grate.
That's right.
In your wall.
So these are, again, in the absence of cost, I like the idea of enclosing your theater area. Okay, I'll put it that way. It would definitely be, because looking at the way this room is now, with that staircase at the back, with this opening to the left, you are not going to get base pressurization down to 20 hertz in this basement. If you leave it alone, you just have to put that idea out of your head unless you change this room. So if that's your goal is, hey, I want to experience full base pressurization right down to 20 hertz, then I am there with you. The only way to do that is to build some walls. But it's going to cost you more than what I think you had in mind when you first asked us about it.
Does he have front wides? Is that what I'm seeing?
Oh, I don't
Does
think
he have
so.
Front wides? What is that?
That
There's a speaker
is
in front of
a left surround speaker that, because there's nowhere convenient to mount it on the left wall, has been placed in front of the seats. Yeah, he's got surround backs that are mounted.
These are surround backs?
There are surround backs that are mounted on the wall, one just above the little bookcase on the left there. And then his side surround speakers are actually, there's one that's either on a stand or fairly low down, mounted on the right wall. And then there's one that is higher up and forward of the seats on the left wall. So, these are other things that could be addressed once you construct new walls in this space. Easily, there are improvements to be had in your audio situation by having these walls constructed. But again, like I predicted last week, the HVAC is going to be the biggest thing that I'm worried about here. And you must speak to an HVAC professional before you do this.
Yeah. I don't. So since I don't think this is going to happen, in any way, shape, or form. There's no way to really predict how the bass is acting in this room because we don't know what's down that hallway, and even if we did, we wouldn't be
or
able
up
to
the stairs, right? There might be a door at the top of those stairs, which it helps, but it's still extra area that makes it hard to predict. Yeah.
So if you left everything the way it is, as far as the shape and out of the room, there's some improvements to be made here.
Okay.
First of all, get rid of your
full base pressurization. That's not going to be.
That's not going to happen.
Just not going to happen.
So your surround back speakers are surround speakers. I hate to break it to you. That's what they are. They're too close. They're basically right there. That's where I would have put surround speakers.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So the surround back speakers need to be wired as surround speakers. Your surround speakers need to be
removed,
just forgotten about. Just get rid of them. They're not doing you any good being in front of you. You've got your tower speakers so close to your center speaker that you're essentially getting a wall of sound. I don't know that you're getting much stereo separation whatsoever if you're not sitting all the way on the left of this couch. And even then, they're so close together. They need to be wider. Now, you've got both of your subwoofers at the front of the room on the outside of the towers, which, I understand why you did that.
Oh, yes.
But don't. So we don't know how the bass is acting in this room anyways, and I don't think that you do either. So keeping a subwoofer at the front of the room, if you really want to, is fine. On the inside, get your tower speakers to the outside, widen them out some.
Apart.
Yeah. Take one subwoofer, put it on the inside. I don't care which one, pick one. It doesn't make any difference to us because it's not. We can't predict how the bass is going to act. Take the other subwoofer and put it on your right wall and just keep sliding it down until it sounds good with the other one, sort of thing. So you're going to end up with sort of these offset subwoofers in hopes of getting some more even bass across your couch. Your couch is slammed up against the right wall anyways, so there's no point having a. You could make the argument of putting this. If you started with the subwoofer just to the left of your TV and your right another subwoofer just behind your couch, that's probably where I would start, and then start moving that right subwoofer away until it was not noticeable as much, is kind of where I would start. So you've now got 5.2.4 because you've got 4 overheads in the ceiling, which is great. You do not need 7 speakers in here. There's no way to make them work properly, so don't worry about it.
Right.
And I think that from an audio perspective, this will be better than what you currently have.
Sure.
So that's my recommendation.
I agree with all of that.
Not that you asked, but you're on this podcast for a reason. Mike, a while back, Mike asked us for outdoor projector suggestions, ideally portable and battery powered, so they can use for his hot tub area. Rob suggested a couple of BenQ models, but Mike decided to go with an Anker Nebula Mars 3 Air that he was already considering, mainly because of his lower price, especially when Amazon put it on sale. For the most part, he says it's serving this need, sometimes to project this image onto the wall next to the hot tub, sometimes onto the hot tub cover itself, which is certainly not white. Maybe it is, but
when they lift up the cover, it forms a privacy wall, so shooting onto the inside of that. Yeah.
And he also has a 100-inch tripod screen they sometimes use. He's thinking he'll probably install a hanging retractable screen in the covered area of the backyard beside the porch. Do we know where this man lives?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I'd be a little. I don't know that I would do that. The retractable one. I think that if you're in any sort of, I mean, it's in a humid environment anyways because it's near this jacuzzi. It's just asking for mold that's going to ruin this thing.
He did mention like having it on a quick release, but I'm like, at that point, are we really that much different than your portable pull-up screen? Yeah. I
mean, there are very easy pull-up screens that exist out there. You're talking about one that's on a tripod, but there are ones that the case sits on the floor and it has a stick on the inside that you can expand, and then you just pull the thing up.
Or even those elite screens that pop open like a sunshade.
Yeah. I understand the tripod because if there's breeze involved, it's certainly more stable than what I'm talking about. So I can understand maybe not having this idea of having something that's pulled down, but I feel like you're basically just going to be throwing the money away on that. He says the Anker Nebula Mars 3 Air,
that's the name, man. I can't.
Is bright enough for their purposes once the sun goes down, but its totally fixed lens position means a lot of its 1080p pixels end up blank, as he needs to put the projector a little farther away than would be ideal for perfectly filling the screen space. So if Anker ever makes an upgraded model with a tiny bit of zoom range, it would be high on his list. Anyways, on to his question. He's actually asking for a friend of his who wants to add a projection setup in his media room. He already has a 98-inch TV wall mounted in there. That for some reason I needed the hyphen. Wall mounted,
must be corrected now that it's already been said.
Yeah, and it's definitely not a totally dedicated theater room. The walls are light in color with no intention of painting them gray or black, which is fine. And it's never totally dark. Mike has a JVC NZ7 in his completely light-controlled room, but his friend's Mia room is a totally different situation, so he doesn't think the NZ7 would be a particularly good fit. Yeah. Mike's friend could afford the NZ7 or even something a bit more expensive, and he wants a motorized screen that can come down in front of his 98-inch TV to get him something like a 140-inch screen side with the projector mounted 20 feet away towards the back of the room. The intention is to use the projector with lights off, so Mike isn't sure if ambient light rejecting screen is necessary or not. As he says, even with the lights off in this room, it isn't fully light controls, and the light from the projector will definitely be bouncing around off the walls and ceiling. But at least he isn't trying to use the projector in a fully lit room. I mean, he will still have the 98-inch TV for that. So any suggestions? Should he just go for maximum lumen output? Should he even be worrying about trying to get the best black levels and contrast when the room is and its ambient lighting are going to be the biggest limiting factor? What do we think Mike's friend should get? So the problem here are twofold. You're worried about the ambient light in the room, and that's a genuine concern. But I'm looking at that 140-inch screen going, geez, you're really limiting a lot of projectors that are out there. Even in a light-controlled situation, they're going to have a hard time filling that screen. 135 is
he did say like
limit.
120 to 140-ish range. So 135 is very common. Or if it's from Seymour AV, they do it by width. It ends up being 137 in their case. But 135 is basically what we're looking at for standard screen size.
So if he's dead set on getting the biggest possible screen available, just warn him that the bigger the screen, the harder it is to get the light output that you're going to need. I will let Rob go with projector setups while I go get my...
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention a couple of things. So, I mean, you know us. We like the JVC projectors best if you're in this sort of price class in terms of, their black levels can't be beat. They have the highest native panel contrast, and then they have that wonderful frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping for HDR. Love all of those things, but to actually get your money's worth out of a JVC DILA projector, you really do need to have the room to go along with it. If you're dealing with a ambient light situation where you can never completely black out this room, you're just never going to enjoy those deepest black levels and that great contrast that they have to offer. It's kind of throwing money away a little bit. So if we look at the less expensive of the JVC DILA projectors, the NP5, the NZ7, in this situation, 135-inch screen, not perfectly light-controlled room, light-colored walls, ambient light present in this room at all times. They are going to struggle. They're not what I would recommend for this purposes. Light output-wise, just having enough lumens to deal with the screen size and the ambient light situation, the NZ8 would maybe be okay. The new NZ800 that's replacing it, a touch better. The NZ9 or the NZ900 up at $26,000 would be able to contend with this quite well. But again, I'm feeling like that would kind of be a waste. Like if you're getting to $26,000, then that's not the way I would go. If you're looking over at the Sony side of things, the XW6000 ES, that's very comparable with the NZ8. The WX7000 ES costs just as much as the new NZ900 and isn't as good, basically, across the board. So none of those really high-end dedicated home theater projectors that we often recommend in these scenarios are what I would point you to here. I'm thinking that this is my personal take, and I believe Tom is going to disagree with me, but I would consider spending more on the screen here, because to get anything like what I sort of believe in my heart of hearts your friend is hoping for here. He's already got that 98-inch TV. This is going to be a huge drop in brightness no matter what you do. Right. But, he is intending, okay, I turn the lights off, at least in this room. I turn on the projector. It's going to be a much bigger image. I'm somewhat prepared for that. But I do think in this scenario that spending some more on the screen makes sense. Now, when it comes to ambient light rejecting screens, probably my favorite materials are the ones from Seymour AV, but they aren't offering them in a motorized retractable at this point. And that's what your friend wants, clearly, one that can come down in front of the wall-mounted TV and go back up. So there are certainly the offerings from Elite screens, but they really focus on overhead light mitigation only. And that's not really the situation that's being mentioned here. This is like this. There's just kind of that ambient light level all around and light reflecting around this room off the light colored walls and that. You really want a screen that just, no matter where that light is coming from, it's rejecting some of it and then keeping as much light reflectance just from the projector as you really can. And so in this situation, I have to hand it to Screen Innovations. While they are not cheap, they are pricier screens. Their Slate 1.2 is almost certainly the screen material that would perform best in this situation. I wasn't always the biggest fan of their original ambient light rejecting screen, their Black Diamond, but the Slate 1.2 that they've introduced, it's a gray color, not as dark gray as that Black Diamond was, just a sort of a generally gray color, but the 1.2 gain is honest. It really is like a 1.2 gain, which means you aren't getting weird sparkles and hot spotting that some ambient light rejecting screens end up giving you. Wide viewing angle, and I imagine in the type of size that you're talking about, that's going to be important, but also just in general, decent, not the very best ambient light rejecting, but just very good general ambient light rejecting from any direction that the light might be coming from. And that's really the scenario that we're talking about here. So for the 135-inch screen size that you're talking about, you're looking at, depending on which version of the motorized, because the Screen Innovations has like 5 or 6 different motorized options for the casing. The least expensive at that size with the Slate 1.2 is going to be a little over $6,000. But if your friend was considering $10,000 plus projectors, that's not necessarily out of the question, because now you can match it with a projector that, look, if we had a totally Batcave dedicated room, doesn't have as good black levels and contrast as your JVC, but we clearly don't have that. We can get more lumen output, still very good performance at half that price, at $4,000 or $5,000. And so those are the options that I'm going to talk about here. I actually think the best choice, with some caveats, might be from JVC, but their DLA offering rather than their or DLP offering rather than their DILA offering. They have their fairly new NZ30. They used to have an NZ3. The NZ30 replaces it and is brighter now for $3,500. Its performance is very comparable to an Epson 5050 in terms of, its overall look in that. But it is brighter than the Epson 5050, 3,300 lumens, and that's actually pretty honest. It is a laser light driven. All of the ones I'm going to mention are actually laser light driven. But its black levels are not as deep as the JVC DILAs, but you're getting better brightness at a much lower price, because to get the same 3,300 lumens, you're talking about the new NZ900 at $26,000, not even close. But it's a good performance. The thing is, all manual lens control. I did look up whether it worked from 20 feet away, and it absolutely will. So that's not a problem. But if you're wanting motorized lens control and some fancy stuff like that, doesn't do that. Doesn't do 3D, although actually none of the projectors I'm going to mention do 3D, but that was never brought up as something that your friend really wants. So for its combination of having sort of the most lumens, a very reasonable price, good performance, and while it does not have JVC's wonderful frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping, it does still have their automatic adaptive HDR and a dimmable laser. So if it's like full black screen, it gets completely black. If it's a generally dark scene in a movie, it will dim the laser so that the black floor is lower while still retaining shadow detail. As soon as there's something bright on the screen, it brightens back up and the black level rises, of course. But it is pretty good in its dynamic setting. So I've seen some people who've measured that NZ30 and they're like, well, in out and out terms, if you just like lock its settings, to be the very most accurate, then it's not necessarily the most impressive thing. But if you allow it to use its dynamic settings, if you care more about the subjective experience of how it looks than just trying to go for like true most accurate, in a measurement type of scenario, it can look very, very impressive if you allow its dynamic features to do their thing. So that might be my favorite choice here. And combined with that screen, you're getting close to that $10,000 mark, but I think that's sort of the right compromise to make here. So the alternatives, if you do want fully motorized everything in the lens, I would probably point you to Epson's laser-driven LS12000. Now, it's 2,700 lumens, which is brighter than their lamp-based, compatriots there, the Epson 5050, for example. But, this one does full 4K 120, if you care about that. I do have to mention the NZ30 tops out at 4K 60, but it could do 1080p 240 if you want to do crazy gaming at a high frame rate. But fully motorized lens in every way for that LS12000 for $5,000. And you can find it for a little bit less than that. That's the MSRP. Then there is LG. They have their AU810. It's actually a little bit older now. That came out back in 2021. $4,000 MSRP. What I like most about it is that does have frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping. It has LG's frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping. But it's not as bright as either the Epson LS12000 or the NZ30. It doesn't have motorized anything. It doesn't have 3D. It's a little bit lesser in almost every way, but it has the frame-by-frame dynamic tone. That's kind of the only reason I'm mentioning it. But I would probably put it between the Epson and the JVC, and I would sort of let whether you want fully motorized lens availability. If this is going to be a set it and forget it, I might lean, even though it costs less, might lean pretty strongly towards that JVC NZ30. So that's where I end up.
So this sounds to me like somebody who's really wanting to have that wow experience, of having a screen drop down in their living room and all these other things. And I understand that. I guess if I were this person's friend, the questions I would ask them have a lot to do with their expectations of how they think everything's going to look when this happens, because like Rob's saying, he's basically giving you the recommendations for the best brightness, the best overall experience, that you're going to get, but it's still not going to look as good as that OLED. Like, it's not going to drop down in front.
I don't think it was a 98-inch OLED. I think it's a LCD.
Or,
but still,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But still, 98-inch flat panel.
I mean,
it really doesn't matter.
Unquestionably going to be 10 times dimmer.
Yes.
That's just
and I think that's what I think I would lead with this conversation. Like, listen, at best, you could spend 10, I could give you some recommendations that would get you, $10,000 worth of equipment that would still be a tenth as bright as your flat panel.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll be cool when it first opens up and everything else. But if you were watching the 98-inch TV and then you said, "Oh, we're going to watch a movie. Let's put on the big screen." The big screen drops down. Everybody in the room is going to go, "Is it going to get brighter? Is this as bright as it gets?" Because the comparison will be noticeable.
But I mean, the difference between, lights fully on while watching the TV and then you turn the lights off and the screen comes down, you let people's eyes adjust, and there is some time because the lights go down and the screen has to motorize its way down and the projector has to turn on. And even though they're all laser driven and they don't take very much time to warm up, there's about 15 seconds before they're ready to go. And that might be just enough time that everybody kind of resets in their brain and it still looks impressive because it's so much bigger. I mean, the other thing is, you said he could spend even more than your NZ7 cost. I'm like, could that go all the way up to $20,000? Because $20,000 can buy you a 115-inch TCL QM891 at this point. Now, that's $20,000, but it's 115 inches, which is noticeably bigger than a 98-inch.
Yeah.
And goes nuts. And you bring that out a foot from the wall, and that's every bit as big as a 125-inch screen now.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess I've had too many experiences with people who think that there's that if they throw enough money at something, they can get exactly what they expect.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's just not the case. Yes, if you have infinite money, you can do that. But people have a number in their head.
Yeah.
That's like, I can spend 10 grand and I will get, and that will give me everything I think is available. And I don't know that those expectations are ever really correct.
On the flip side, like if you say paired an Epson LS12000 with a Slate 1.2 screen from Screen Innovations, we're like, that's an impressive looking movie experience. It is impressive. Yes. It's just that this person happens to also have a 98-inch LCD right behind it that is 10 times brighter. That's the problem. Yeah.
Right. And so I guess that's my one warning to you. And this is why I'm very hesitant to, in real life, help answer questions for people about TVs and about these sort of setups, because what they really want is what they expect, and they don't necessarily have a good frame of reference. You do. You've been doing this long enough that you understand that there are limitations of certain technologies that cannot be overcome. Like, they're like, I want a movie-like experience. No, you don't, because if you actually had the 30-foot Lamberts that you get at at a movie theater at home, you'd be like, why does this look so bad? It's just, you're just not used to it. At home, like at the movie theater, where you've been sitting there for 20 minutes waiting for the screen to turn on.
And there is that expectation of, well, I turned the lights off, so isn't that a dark room? And it's like that in home theater terms, that's not a dark room.
That's not.
That's like the baseline. Like, that's where home theater fans watch their LCD TV is with the lights turned out. That's not a theater dark room. Yeah.
So I guess there's some education to be done on your part, but also, this is the time when, if somebody's willing to spend this kind of money, just direct them towards if you feel the conversation going down the path of, but can't I just, then just direct them towards a custom installer. Let the custom installer deal with it.
Or they might not know that there is a 115-inch TCL TV these days, because that is very new, and they definitely might not know that that's there. And yes, it is $20,000 right now, but if they're playing in that sort of ballpark, they might just go, oh, That's what I want.
That's what I really want. I just want a bigger TV.
Yeah.
Is what I want. If they're not going for like this wow thing of it dropping from the ceiling
That's
or whatever.
Right.
Sasi wanted to ask us some questions about surge protectors, power conditioners, and UPS battery backups. Sasi has gathered from the general impression that unless you're noticing a specific power-related issue, power conditioners don't really provide any noticeable benefit. Is he right or wrong in that? If you mean by power conditioners voltage regulation, which is what most people mean, some people think that the power
I don't know about that. I mean, a lot of so-called power conditioners are just filters. That's all they are. So
that dirty power idea that's out there. I mean, what does dirty power even look like, really? You know what I mean? Like, how would you describe it?
You can see it on an oscilloscope. You can see it on a waveform. Like, rather than nothing but a 60 hertz sine wave, there you can see the little squiggles in there because there is other stuff on your power line. Yeah.
But yes, you are correct. There is no noticeable benefit. If you're not getting wild voltage swings and things like that, then you're turning your vacuum cleaner on and the lights in the house dim.
Right.
Then there is no benefit.
The claim that it makes your black levels better, that it makes your noise floors more silent, any of those types of things. Nope, that is all bunk.
So compared to just a properly designed surge protector, what benefits does a power conditioner provide? What is a power conditioner doing that a surge protector is not? So here's my personal, because I have lived in both types of houses. You know, I mean, back in the 70s when I was growing up, you turned the vacuum cleaner on and you got static on your TV.
Absolutely.
That happened.
Or your air conditioner kicks on, someone is doing a load of laundry and the dryer goes on. Yeah.
The mixer.
Yeah.
Your mixer is turned on.
Blender.
So, yes, that is when a power conditioner has benefit. But most of the time, I'm looking for surge protection in a form factor that works with, my gear, if you will, and battery backup.
Yeah.
So those are the two things I'm looking at. And in between those two things is voltage regulation. Whether I want it or not, it exists. Therefore, I have it.
Aren't very many battery backups that don't also provide filtering of the power.
Sure.
And voltage regulation, because that kind of comes along for the ride.
Yeah. So if you're not worried about your equipment cooling down properly, if you don't have that kind of equipment, or you're thinking that a power outage is going to be a problem for the longevity of your gear, like your projector, or maybe a plasma TV, or even OLEDs that need to kind of cool down a little bit. Not that they have fans, but they just need cooling sort of things. Then maybe you only need a surge protector. You just have to make sure you get one that is appropriate for the gear that you're using and lets through the full voltage that you need. And I think that there's a very good argument to be made for that.
Oh yeah.
The problem is that a lot of times we're recommending battery backups for people who have projectors and other things that projectors in particular really need to cool down properly with their fans. And if you've got these crown amps or other things with computer fans in them, or even if you have a receiver that's kind of shoved into a case, so you're using one of those AC infinity fans, to help cool it off, you want that AC infinity fan to have power to cool off your receiver after you power down your
anything that might be saving something or in the middle of a firmware update or whatever. It's awfully nice if that power doesn't cut out suddenly right while that's going on.
Yeah. So yes, you can make the argument that all you need is surge protection. Obviously, UPS battery backups have the additional benefit of providing power during a blackout. So why are so many power conditioners that don't have a battery more expensive than even pure sine wave UPS units? It seems like battery backups should be more expensive. That doesn't seem to be the case. What's up with that? The people they're selling them to?
Yep.
Who will pay the money?
Why do gaming headphones and microphones that objectively sound worse than non-gaming headphones and microphones cost more?
The ones with the LED lights, why do they cost as much as ones without LED lights but sound so much worse? You tell me.
No, I'm right there with you. I find it very difficult in most situations to go for a power conditioner these days, right? I'm either going to get a surge protector, because I just want surge protection, or I'm going to get a battery backup, which is going to provide everything a power conditioner might do, and the very obvious benefit of keeping stuff going when the power goes out. Right. So I find it very difficult to go for just a power conditioner at this point in my life.
Ooh, I scrolled back down. I think I hit it. I think I hit it because I thought of a name for the podcast, so I went to the top. Are any of these power protection devices literally reconstructing the AC sine wave and completely separating your gear from the wall outlet in any way? So
that does exist.
That does exist. So the one that I'm using, the IO Gear one, you can set it so that you're running off the battery at all times.
Yeah, it's an option.
It is. You don't have to. You actually, it's better for the longevity of the device if you run
don't
off. Yes, if you run off of the mains and the mains also keep the batteries topped off rather than running off the battery the entire
constantly time. Yeah, it's the difference. They call the one where it is always being powered by the battery and inline uninterruptible power supply versus an online uninterruptible power supply, which is the battery is standing by and waiting, and when the power cuts out, there are a few milliseconds where that power is gone before the battery kicks in, but it's usually fast enough that your devices don't actually shut themselves down. It's gotten very good these days. But yeah, there is that difference. So the ones where it is 100% of the time, the battery is powering your devices and having it plugged into the wall is just constantly recharging that battery. Those inline UPSs, they are, and for all intents and purposes, reconstructing the sine wave because the sine wave that you're using is coming out of the battery 100% of the time.
Right.
But they do cost more. The inline ones definitely cost more than the online only ones. Yeah.
I'll try to get that link and put it in there for you for the IO Gear one so that you can, I think it's around $700.
Yeah.
So it's not cheap. My wife is apparently home because my door is closing by itself. So either my dogs have grown thumbs or my wife is home. Mohsen in Australia, after a discussion last week, Mohsen is pretty sure he's going to keep his new 11-channel tone winner amplifier regardless. But we pretty much convinced him that when he goes to replace his Yamaha RX V2085 receiver, he'll do so with a 13-channel Denon receiver. At the moment, there's $1,000 US Australian price difference between the 6800H and the older 6700H. Can that price difference be justified in his case? Should he maybe wait until the end of the year and hope for the price of the 6800H to come down a bit? I don't know if there's any difference.
Yeah, well, so I mean, there definitely are differences. I mean, the key difference is that the 6700H only had a single HDMI 2.1 40 gigabit per second input, whereas all of the HDMI ports on the 6800H are HDMI 2.1 40 gigabits per second. But in his current setup, that doesn't matter to Mohsen. He's using a projector that never goes above 4K 60. So HDMI 2.1 is not a factor at this moment. Could be a future-proofing idea, but that is normally the reason people might most strongly consider it. Now, there are considerable feature differences between the 6700H and the 6800H. So if you do intend to pay the extra money and use Dirac instead of Odyssey, that's an option on the 6800, not an option on the 6700. The 6800 has perhaps the feature that I like most for Mohsen in particular, which is that we talked about last week. We want him to get some tactile transducers instead of just having Yamaha subwoofers that have been high-pass filtered and firing directly into the back of his couch.
I forgot about that.
So the 6800 is the one that gives you that option to turn one of its 4 subwoofer outputs. The 6700H only has 2 subwoofer outputs. The 68 lets you turn one of its 4 subwoofer outputs into a dedicated tactile transducer output that doesn't have the Odyssey correction on that subwoofer output and lets those tactile transducers work their best with a minimum of fuss. Is that worth 1,000 Australian dollars? That's kind of tough to say, but
I guess it depends on how much of a problem you think it is to have to undo your room correction every time.
Because there is time and hassle involved in undoing
easy.
Things. And if you are valuing your time and hassle at a pretty good rate, then that could do it. So yeah, I mean this is
not the type of listener who values his time very highly. I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, he is.
I don't know.
He is doing, and it's not any sort of slight towards Mohsen,
not at all.
At all. It's just if you enjoy doing a thing, it's not it costs nothing. You're paying yourself by doing it. You know, and I completely understand that. But at some point, it does become a hassle, and at that point, you have to start factoring in that cost.
Yeah,
I would wait. I would wait for the 6800H.
Yeah, if you
1,000%.
If you can wait, if you're okay to wait, and I would do so in your case because I would give myself some time with the changes that you've just made, rather than making yet another change.
Yes.
You know, and doing everything in such rapid succession. I know how it goes. It starts, you know, it's a bit of a snowball rolling downhill when you get into this stuff. But I would allow yourself some time. But you know, I think there are some nice things there that you would enjoy about the 6800H. So for that reason, you know, if the price is not an outright problem, I would lean for you towards the 6800H. But because it is right now $1,000 in price difference, I would enjoy what I have for a little while, wait for that price. I don't expect it really to come down precipitously because we aren't anticipating new models coming out at the end of the year to replace everything that's in Denon's lineup right now. So I'm not expecting some massive price drop to happen, but there's always sales at the end of the year. So I think if you can wait until then, that does make sense. And I would probably lean towards the 6800.
Yeah. So previous AVRant guest co-host Joe Kluznik,
yes.
Kluznik, that's what I said.
You
Joe
did.
comes to us from time to time when he's looking to talk someone for someone to talk him down off the ledge of a big, potentially unnecessary home theater purchase. In his dedicated home theater room, he has a long-used Marantz separates. He has two 8077 7-channel amplifiers currently powering 13 speakers, and he went from the 7702 Pre-Pro to the 7702 Mark II to his current 8805. He has always been able to sell his previous Pre-Pro to help offset the cost of the upgrade. So now he's starting to find some AV10 Pre-Pro units at prices lower than their $7,000 MSRP, and he figures he'll get about $2,000 if he sells the 8805. Of course, if he gets that AV10, he will need to buy two more speakers for the full 15-speaker 9.4.6 configuration that the AV10 is capable of, and that will mean he will also needs to get on the 2-channel Marantz amplifier since he's one channel shy with just his pair of 8077 amps. He might also have to satisfy his curiosity about everything Dirac can possibly do compared to Odyssey.
A whole bunch of money being spent here.
I don't know. So this could be an expensive venture. Do we think he should go for it? His 8805 is only going to keep depreciating in value, but on the con side, that was a con. I mean, was that not a con?
He's saying that's a reason to do it because he's like, the longer I
that's
wait,
still
the less
not a
I
pro.
get back
that's
for
a con.
For my 8805.
He doesn't actually like the new looks of the AV10's front panel since it doesn't aesthetically match the MM8077 amplifiers. Might have to get that 16-channel Marantz Amp 10 for another $7,000 to keep everything looking like it matches properly, you know? I know this is tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
I know this.
It is, yes.
And I appreciate that.
He's just like the circles he runs in. They're all like, of course. Why wouldn't you spend $7,000 to get the thing that you in passing at least want? We're the only ones to talk him down, Tom. The only ones.
We're it. I mean, clearly he knows he shouldn't do this, and if he does it, he knows that he's doing it purely for,
just to have the latest and greatest. That's all.
And that's fine. I mean,
it sure is.
Somebody has to buy these things. Someone has to, and we can't keep relying on the custom installers to upsell a bunch of people who use it once a year.
Yeah.
In their multi-million-dollar mansions and don't know how the remote works, so it's all in mono the entire time. It's all channel stereo modes and stuff like that. Somebody has to do these things, and if it's Joe, then it's Joe. I think that's fine. I mean, at least he knows how to use it and set it up and appreciates it.
Yeah, he does it properly.
There's this, and I often portray this as being true of myself, where I think that value and performance above all else, like if you're not getting the product that gives you, like, there's no reason to have surround backs because they don't provide enough value for your surround experience. So Atmos speakers are only for the ultra rich who have no other reason. They just have money behind the couch to spend on things. But the reality is, you can make a compelling argument to me about buying something like this with the only reasoning is I can afford it and I want it.
Yeah.
That is fine. I think that that's a perfectly valid reason to buy something, especially in this case. Home theater is a luxury hobby. It is it is not a hobby for people who are like, I am, I need this to survive, but other people do it for fun, that sort of thing. This is a luxury hobby, and I can definitely look at some amplifiers and example, I was at the bike shop yesterday and I put a chain on a bike. And it's this chain, it's a SRAM chain for those of you that are into such a thing. It has a flat side and like a normal chain looking side that's kind of got that, like, if you think of a bicycle chain as each link being like a little 8, looks like a little 8, right? Well, this chain has a flat side and like that curvy side, right? And we put the chain on there and everybody in the shop walked by and go, dang, that's a good looking chain. It's a good looking chain. It's $67 or something like that. I think our cost for the chain. It's ridiculously expensive. It's a 12-speed chain. They're all expensive, but it's so good looking that we are all like, we should just all buy this chain. Okay. And none of us have 12-speed drivetrain, so it wouldn't work, but we all want the chain because it looks so good. Does it perform any better? I don't know. I don't know. It might, but it definitely looks good. And that is a reason enough for some people to just buy things. I see. And I think that's fine. I think that's just fine. The problem I always have is when people say, I need this thing because if I don't, I will be missing out on something. Joe's not saying that. He's all like, I know that this is not going to make that much of a difference, but I kind of want it because it looks nice and I'll have the latest and greatest.
I mean, the one thing he doesn't really love is the looks. And for that reason, very genuinely. So, I mean,
I'm talking about for the matching amp that he wants it for the looks.
Answering straight ahead, Joe, for you or for myself, I would not buy the Marantz AV10. But if I had the money available, if it was affordable to me, I would buy the Denon A1H. Okay. The receiver, which is MSRP $500 less, $6,500 less, even though it has 15 amplifiers built into it. But I mean, look, if you don't buy whole new amplifiers, the aesthetics are not going to match either way. Right? The AV10 is not going to match the amplifiers you already own. Neither is the Denon A1H. So if that's a wash and you could live with the look of the Denon A1H, it prevents you from having to buy more amplifiers because for the 2 additional channels, it can handle powering 2 speakers in your setup itself, and you can still use, or in fact, it only needs to power 1, right? It can power 1 speaker out of your setup, and you can still use the 14 channels of external amplification that you already have on hand. It costs less to begin with, and then it has a stellar preamp output section, and you can individually, one by one, turn channels on or off, the built-in amplifiers on or off in that A1H, and the feature set is identical. Compared to the AV10. So that is my genuine answer. If you have the money available, I would buy an A1H right now if I had the disposable cash on hand. I would do it, but I wouldn't buy an AV10. That's my honest answer.
So I guess, so then you run into the other side of this. I'm thinking about it from his perspective. I'm like, okay, he wants the latest and greatest, and maybe Rob's got a solution for the latest and greatest. But he also cares about the aesthetic of it. So is there some way that we can have both? And one of the ways you can do that is instead of showing off the electronic gear, you can hide all the electronic gear into something super fancy and neat that you know the gear's back there. Call it the black cloth over the custom furniture of your home theater.
We've only done half of our questions, Tom, but we're already close to 2 hours. So.
I know. It's okay. We'll be fine. We have lots of questions for next week. Oodles. So you could have some sort of custom built cabinet sort of thing that, maybe doesn't necessarily show off the gear, but is still cool enough that you're like, wow, I really like seeing this thing. And now I can put whatever I want in there. It doesn't really matter all that much. So I would consider that. Paul and his wife have not been entirely satisfied with their current living room TV. It's a nice TV, a Sony 85-inch X900H, but their living room is very bright. It just doesn't look all that good during the day. Even if Paul lowers the blinds on his large windows, the TV still is kind of hard to see, and his wife really prefers to keep the blinds open, which basically renders the TV useless. So first up, the distance from my screen is almost 13 feet, and they don't have any intention whatsoever of considering any sort of projection setup. Well, that's good, because that's certainly not going to help this situation.
No, not in this room.
So would it make sense to consider upgrading to a 98-inch or 100-inch screen size? His budget tops out at about $5,000. And now that we have all that context, which TV do we think he should get? Going by some of the Erting's recommendation guides, it seems that's maybe a Hisense U8 model would fit the bill, but he's a bit worried about their upscaling and reliability, especially since they'll be switching from a Sony. What do we say? So there's two things that I certainly going for the bigger screen is not necessarily a bad thing. I
would love to. I mean, at 13 feet or close to, I think I said 12 feet 10 inches in his email. Look, you could go for a 140-inch, screen, and that would be fine. Yeah. That would be about a 45-degree field of view. But yeah, from over 12 feet away for an 85-inch screen, I would love to go bigger. And you can. Yeah. For $5,000, you can get a 98-inch TV, for sure.
So I guess the other thing I'm going to say here is I'm not hearing him say anything sort of about different settings for high light and low light viewing. So
no, but I mean, regardless, the X900H just can't get bright enough to overcome what's going on.
So the two things I'm going to suggest is you get a different TV where it can get bright enough, and then you have the two different brightness settings: the daytime settings and the nighttime settings. So which TV should he get, Rob?
I'm pretty strongly in favor of a single choice here, and that being the brand new TCL QM, and we have to be careful here, QM 851. Because last year's model was the 850. This year's model is the 851, but they are significantly different. It's not just a teeny tiny little change, despite the model number being so minuscule in change there from 850 to 851. But the 851 is almost twice as bright as the 850 was. This is a genuine 5,000 nit TV that can sustain 1,000 nits full screen. They've tested this thing. The 98-inch one is like the Boku one to get because it has, I think it was close to 20,000 dimming zones that the 98-inch has on the 851, the brand new one, and it is $5,000. I can't believe that 98-inch TV is $5,000. It is outrageous. I'm going to
go tell my wife. We're going to go get one.
No, but I mean, it's crazy how good it is.
I will see you all in the divorce court.
There's nothing else. There's nothing else that I would get for your situation, Paul. So if you got $5,000 that you can spend, if the QM 851 for $5,000 at 98 inches doesn't satisfy you, nothing will.
Raf in Australia. Raf always thought of himself as a physical media fan, and he does continue to want the best audio and video quality available, but if he's being honest, the lion's share of his viewing is all streaming services now. He pays for the highest tier of Netflix, and their Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos offerings look and sound pretty darn good. Yeah. When he wants to rent a new release...
Something made a noise out there.
That was the dog squeaking. Somebody must have stepped on her. Mm-hmm. He's mostly been using Amazon Prime. The video quality and HDR have been good enough to keep him happy on that front, but the audio kind of seems to suck. Furioso was the latest example. It looked great via Amazon Prime rental, but the dialogue was quiet and the bass didn't have the dynamic range he was expecting. And overall, the whole movie just sounded kind of flat. He hasn't noticed these same issues via Netflix, so this isn't like his internet connection or download speeds, right?
Doubtful. Do not believe so, no. Yeah.
Is this just an Amazon Prime issue, or they're compressing the audio dynamic range for some reason? I don't know, but the answer is yes.
I mean, I would say, because on all of these streaming services, there are sometimes settings, like playback settings, that affect your audio and video quality that only show up when you go to the website on a computer browser. They're nowhere in the app. They're not in the system settings for whatever streaming device you're using. They're nowhere in your television. They only show up when you go and look at the settings that are available on the web interface on a computer. through a web browser. So I would check that, because it is certainly possible that there's some kind of dynamic range compression setting or something stupid like that, or that it actually has, there's very often like a low, medium, high bandwidth thing that they allow through, and they always prioritize the video and never the audio, and maybe yours is set to high but not maximum, right? That happens all the time. We see things like
There's
that.
There's definitely that setting on Netflix for sure.
Oh yeah. So I would absolutely at least check, because that's free. You can just go to the web, and you probably haven't logged into Amazon Prime Video on your computer in ages.
Maybe ever.
Maybe ever. So at the very least, I would check that, because that is entirely possible that there is some kind of setting there that only shows up in the web interface. Also, I mean, on that front, I would check all the settings, both in whatever app you're using and in the device that you're using, because sometimes there are app-specific settings in the devices menu, not even in the apps menu. So, I mean, I would check all of that.
Put it beyond like Google and Apple to have like some volume limiting thing just for Amazon Prime.
Yep.
Just to screw with them. Yep. So could be.
But
it could also be that, I mean, we have encountered things where a specific movie or content has audio that is not up to par.
Yeah, like I don't want to get your hopes too high, because I do want you to check, but I don't want to raise your hopes too high, because it is there are definitely cases where some of the movies across some of the streaming services, I'm like, oh, that just isn't good. That just is not a good experience.
Todd says he's followed our advice and acoustically treated his front, back, and side walls. He used Owens Corning 703 installation. Now that's done, he feels like his new home theater build is finally complete. So now he's trying to dial everything in using his Marantz Cinema 50 receiver, the Odyssey Editor app, and Mini DSP 2x4 HD, and Room EQ Wizard, his pair of subwoofers, 2 SVS PB3000 subs. One is at the front of the room, one is at the back of the room, and while they're not perfectly centered on the walls, they're close. It's probably close enough, my dear.
Yep.
To be honest with you.
It's still much better than both at the front.
Yeah, he used a single subwoofer output from the Marantz and plugged that into his Mini DSP 2x4 HD, plugged that into his computer. Plugged his computer into his Marantz and ran some bass sweeps using Room EQ Wizard and measured with the UMic 1 without touching anything. No setting changes, no touching the mic at all. All he did was measure and Room EQ Wizard a few times in a row just to see how consistent his readings were. And the general shape was pretty similar. The dB level amplitude was different each time he measured. So the shape was similar, but the dB level was different.
Yeah.
He tried eliminating the Mini and DSP from the signal chain and just used 2 of the subwoofer outputs directly from the Marantz. Same thing. Still different amplitude results, resulting in the exact same measurement multiple times in a row. Running the exact same measurements all the time. He tried using the Odyssey Editor app while running Odyssey and then measuring a bass sweep via Room EQ Wizard, both Odyssey on and off. And always the same thing. The graph is generally the same shape, although it does have some noticeable differences, sometimes in frequency response. The overall dB level, but different overall dB level each time. Is something just set up incorrectly? Have we ever experienced a similar thing? It ought to be more consistent than this, right? How close are you to this microphone physically?
Okay.
You personally.
Okay.
The person of you.
Yeah.
How close are you to the microphone? Are you in the same place in the room each time you're doing? Are you moving around? Are you pacing? Are you bored? Are you doing anything? It's amazing to me how your presence, just the physical being of you being close to a microphone, can affect the measurement of the mic. So that would be the first thing I would suspect. Sure. Just make sure everything is exactly the same with each measurement, where you're sitting, how you're sitting, how much moving you're doing.
If you were doing all these measurements and you were just sitting in the seat to the left of the microphone, like I would get out of the way. that would be one thing.
The further away you are from the microphone when this is happening, the better off you are. You're gonna, to a certain extent, you're gonna make yourself a little bit crazy with these measurements, because it happens to everybody who starts these things. They start, drilling down on every little squiggle as being some sort of big major thing. And
this is a little unusual, though.
It is.
Like it's rare that you take 3 measurements back to back to back, and they superimpose so perfectly that they literally look like a single line. That is what typically happens. There's always some little minor squiggles, but what he showed is
5 dB difference.
Yeah, I mean, I'm that almost looks like you hit the separate them only in the graph, not in real life button, just to separate, but it isn't enough that's the button that he pressed in the RumiQ Wizard software. This is significant enough where I'm like, yeah, that's unusual. Like, that isn't my typical experience running RumiQ Wizard. It doesn't usually do that. So this makes me think that something in this entire signal chain, and there are multiple things in this signal chain, but that something has some kind of dynamic setting applied.
Yeah.
Now, honestly,
going through the Marantz? It's going through the Marantz, right?
It's going through the Marantz, yes.
That's where I would look first.
So, of course, if dynamic EQ or dynamic volume has accidentally been left on, if there's any sort of night mode setting, if there's any dynamic setting present in the Marantz, and of course, one way that you could completely eliminate that as a possibility is that you would, of course, have to have some kind of analog output, but that you connect your computer's output directly to the mini DSP 2x4 instead of it going through the Marantz.
Which is how we would have normally recommended we do this, right?
Well, if this is like for setting up multi-sub optimizer prior to using it, but not necessarily, because he's only got 2 subs, so I'm not usually going to recommend using the multi-sub optimizer software for a 2 subwoofer setup. Not that you can't, but it just doesn't do its best work that way. But just to troubleshoot this precise issue and try and eliminate, like, hey, what is causing this change? Because if you plug your computer probably has a headphone jack, so you can just use that as a line out. So you get the little adapter cable, so you can plug it straight into the mini DSP. If you do that and you still end up with this variance, then there is every possibility that there is a setting in your computer that is dynamically adjusting the microphone level, because of course that happens, right? If I'm on a Skype call, by default, it tries to automatically adjust my microphone level on me. And anything else that I might be using that is also using that microphone, my OBS software, my Audacity software, anything else gets impacted by Skype trying to dynamically change the volume of my microphone input. So it is a not improbable scenario that you have a setting or a software running in the background on your computer that has access to the microphone input and is dynamically changing it on you. That would actually probably, I would suspect that more than the Marantz, but it's probably easier to check the Marantz settings just because there's fewer of them. But I'm betting there is something in your computer that has access to the microphone input and is applying some kind of automatic dynamic control to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brad recently completed his new finished basement. He had a 3-inch thick acoustic panels just this past week, and he has now moved all of his home theater equipment into the room. He's excited to get everything set up and dialed in. He's got a new TCL 85-inch QM8 TV ready to go, 5.2.2 Atmos speaker configuration, but his Denon X3500H is a little on the older side now, and he's thinking it might be time for an upgrade. His receiver can't pass through all the newest HDMI 2.1 formats. It does pass Dolby Vision, but not HDR10, and his QM8 supports 10 plus, sorry. And his QM8 supports both. And if he decides to expand to 4 overhead speakers, he'll need a new model for that. So first and foremost, do we agree he can justify a new receiver purchase at this time? He feels like he got good use out of his 3500H over 6 years, but if it really isn't worth it, money is money. 3500.
Yeah, it's going back a ways.
I mean, it still probably has, does it have eARC? I guess is the question.
3500H. Gosh, I can't.
Because mine's the 43 and it doesn't.
Right.
So
it should 35 because it was the very next model series that did add that.
It does.
Yeah.
So you could, in theory, plug everything into your TV.
Like anything that needs HDMI 2.1. Although, in the case of the TCL QM8, that would be one. Because
it only has one input.
Well, it has 2 HDMI 2.1 ports, but one of them is the eARC port.
Right.
So you end up in a scenario where your AV receiver has 0 HDMI 2.1 ports. You don't have one source that can plug directly into the QM8, and then you have to use the other one as the eARC port, unfortunately.
So here's the question you have to ask yourself. How many sources do I have that I'm going to be using this thing with?
Yeah.
And is it important enough to me to care?
right.
to do that, because you can, at least with one source, the source that you care most about, plug it directly into the TV and then use eARC to get the audio back to the receiver. And then you still have all the benefits of all the things and all that. But if you really want to plug everything into your receiver and you do want to support everything, then yes, you could upgrade. And I can make an argument both ways.
Yeah, so, like this isn't one where I'm going to be like, oh, no, you shouldn't. You know, it's not a wasteful upgrade in this instance. Of course, it matters. You know, what kind of money you have left on hand. You know, if this is gonna put you into debt, then don't do it. Use eARC instead. But if you're like, yeah, I could afford this. I feel like I've got my value from what I owned before. Maybe you're able to sell it and recoup some money, something along those lines. Like I think you can justify this upgrade at this time. That's where I would land.
So he's mainly considering the Denon X3800H or the Onkyo TX RZ50. He's very curious about DRAC, and the RZ50 comes with out of the box. And while it would cost extra to add, it would cost extra to add it to the 3800H. But he's already familiar with the Odyssey editor app, and he noticed that the dual subwoofer outputs on the RZ50 are not independent, which is fine, by the way.
I know,
which is fine. So which receiver model do we think he should get? The Denon.
I mean, I do. Although I like that RZ50 a lot. You know, anybody who got that, I'm like, yeah, you got a good receiver. It's a
there's nothing wrong with it.
It's a very nice receiver.
Be clear, but you know, Andrews, I think, got it right, and he
got the 7100. He got the NR 7100, which is one model level down.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and he wrote an article about switching from Odyssey to DRAC, and it's called "I Wish I Hadn't." So I'll tell you that right now. Yeah. It's not that DRAC isn't good. It's not that DRAC doesn't do the job. It's not that DRAC isn't got its benefits. I don't think that this number of people who are curious about DRAC.
Yeah. No, and
I don't think they're going to
blame
use
them.
it.
The hype online in the forums
is insane.
Blew it out of proportion. Really did blow it out of proportion. And actually, there's a fair amount of swing back now. there's a not inconsequential amount of swing back. Not just because of multi-QX. One of the things that we're not going to get to this week, but we'll talk about next week. You know, that some people have done some pretty interesting things with Odyssey, and there's a fair amount of swing back on the forums and that now. Not that anybody is like poo-pooing DRAC, certainly not there, but they're a lot more equivalent than the initial hype when DRAC was the new shiny thing in town, and it got blown a little bit out of proportion. So there is one thing I have to think about this, because so my leaning is, if it were just between these two, I would favor the X3800H. It has a handful more features than the RZ50 does. They are pretty darn close to the same price. You do have the option of adding DRAC, although I wouldn't necessarily add that price. That would make the 3800 more expensive than the RZ50, of course. But overall, I would personally choose the 3800 if it's between those two. But he never mentioned that he needs to go beyond 9 speakers, because he's like, I got 5.2.2 right now. I could go to 5.2.4. And that I'm not against that, because right now you don't have front to back steering overhead. And I like the idea that you could expand to front to back steering overhead, have 4 overhead speakers, but no talk of going beyond 9 speakers. And then no talk of, like, you know, the 3800H and the RZ50, they both have full sets of pre-outs. You have that option of adding external amplification, but no mention of that's what he intends to do. So there is that Onkyo NR 7100. The model that's one step down from the RZ50 and is significantly less expensive.
Yeah.
That also comes with DRAC Live Full right out of the box, if that's really what you want to go for. Now, it stops at 9, it cannot go to 11, and it does not have any pre-outs. You are using the 9 built-in amplifiers. There's no option about that. And maybe something that he didn't mention in his email makes that a no-go for him. And I wouldn't blame you, but since none of that stuff was mentioned, I'm like, maybe you didn't consider the NR 7100. Maybe the model number just threw you off, and you didn't think it was nearly as capable, but it is. If you're going to stop at 9, and you're going to use the AV receiver to power all 9 of those speakers, it is definitely a consideration, because it's a not insignificant amount of money, the price difference between the 3800H and the NR 7100 from Onkyo or the RZ50. So that might be the way to go. It might be. It's a very nice receiver.
All right. Who do we have left?
We have on our list James and Alex. I believe that's it. Yep, that's it. James and Alex. You'll be on next week.
All right. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Raph for going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and sending us a PayPal donation, as well as our 134 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Raph, for your PayPal donation. And patreon.com/AVRant podcast is the place you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thanks to our 134 patrons over there.
All right. We also thank Sasi, Joe, Paul, Vince, and Brad for sending us notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going. Thank you very much to all of you.
Yep, those were the notes of gratitude, and we appreciate them from Sasi, Joe, Paul, Vince, and Brad. Oh, and Tom highlighted it. I know he didn't miss it. Here we go.
I didn't miss it. And we want to thank Mark for for actually visiting TomAndre.com. Don't visit it.
Trying to. He attempted it.
Yeah.
Or maybe just click the link by accident. He's like, what the heck happened there?
Whoops.
But thank you, Mark, for that. And thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
To get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at avrant.com. No.
Question at avrant.com might help. Yeah,
sorry, I was typing in avrant.com.
We've even got the little graphic to help you remember it for the occasional, sometimes people who somehow manage to email me and go, where do I send questions? Which is one of the most bizarre things to ever happen. But there it is. Question at AVRant is the avrant.com. I should be complete.
There you go.
That's the
For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.